and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. With Britain's population on track to overtake France for the first time, is Britain becoming borderless? Also, as Just Stop Oil protesters and crazed TikTok teenagers run riot, is British policing now institutionally woke? And top comedian Paul Cox reveals why he's been cancelled for being white. Back to me, folks. Plus, it is the biggest media story of the year, potentially of the decade. One of the best-known TV presenters in the country, Philip Schofield, has sensationally been dumped by his agent. Now, he owns shares in that company. They have cut ties. He has also left ITV with immediate effect. No award ceremonies, no primetime series. He is out. Why is he out? Well, because he has admitted that he lied to his colleagues and the media about an affair he had with a young male ITV employee. It's an extraordinary story. We will bring you across-the-board coverage of this. We're getting more information as we broadcast, and we've got bids in with some of the biggest names in TV. Top agents, TV presenters, you name it, they will have their 2 pennies worth. So, Philip Schofield out of ITV, sacked by his agent. It's a massive story, and you won't want to go anywhere. Lots to get through, but first, the news headlines with Rory Smith.
Thank you very much. Well, as you've been hearing, Philip Schofield has resigned from ITV after admitting to having an affair with what he called a younger male colleague at This Morning. He told the Daily Mail he lied about the relationship to his wife, to ITV, to colleagues, to friends and his agents. Schofield admitted helping the man get into television when he was a teenager before developing a consensual on-off relationship with him. Philip has stepped down from ITV with immediate effect, meaning he won't be presenting the British Soap Awards next week or any other show on the channel. He has apologised, saying the relationship, which is now ended, was unwise but not illegal. A man has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years for the murder of 15-month-old Jacob Lennon. Jake Drummond, the partner of the toddler's mother, was jailed following a campaign of cruel and sadistic abuse. The boy suffered multiple injuries over a 3-week period in 2019. The victim's mother, Louise Lennon, was jailed for 10 years for allowing Jacob's death. Well, in other news, the parents of a 10-month-old boy who murdered him on Christmas Day in 2020 have been jailed for life. Finlay Bowden's mother, Shannon Marsden, was given a minimum term of 27 years, whilst his father, Stephen Bowden, was given a minimum sentence of 29 years. The baby was taken into care shortly after birth due to child protection concerns, but he was put back into his parents' care just 39 days before he died. Police said the pair were jailed for what they described as an incomprehensible crime.
Bowden and Marsden, from the moment Finlay returned to their care, throughout the trial, after conviction, and even at sentence, have never taken responsibility for their actions. They lied and obstructed professionals who were attempting to see Finlay to establish that he was being cared for in the correct manner.
A man who shoved Just Stop Oil protesters off the road earlier this week has told GB News he felt he had to take matters into his own hands. Scaffolder Louis Greaves pushed 2 people from the group who brought traffic to a standstill in London on Tuesday. He was briefly detained by police on suspicion of common assault. Well, he told us he was doing the work he says the police should have been doing.
So, of course, there was already troubles on the railways anyway. And I had to get off the train station. I was in the car and all that, trying to get over the bridge. And then, of course, they're just standing there, making me even more late for work. And there's two police officers just standing there looking at them. Like, they're not doing their jobs. So if they can't do it, then the members of the public start doing it for them.
TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now, though, back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. With Britain's population on track to overtake France for the first time ever, is Britain becoming borderless? As Just Stop Oil protesters and crazed TikTok teenagers run riot, is British policing institutionally woke? And comedian Paul Cox reveals he's been cancelled for being white. In my big opinion, why the BBC is now using taxpayers' money to censor the public. More on this free speech scandal shortly. In the big story, and it is a massive story, possibly the media story of the year, if not the decade, Philip Schofield has stepped down with immediate effect as a presenter on ITV. He's been fired by his agent. Look, the facts around this are coming in thick and fast. He has admitted that he lied to his colleagues and the media about an affair he had with a younger male ITV employee. In a statement given to the Daily Mail newspaper, he said, "I'm making this statement via the Mail, to whom I've already apologised for misleading, and through my lawyer, who I also misled." There you have it, folks. Philip Schofield lied to his lawyer. He lied to ITV. He lied to his wife. He lied effectively to the great British people with that fake act of his for so many years. So, full reaction to the media bombshell story of the year. Philip Schofield is out of ITV. Speaking, by the way, about privileged presenters, in my take at 10, Saint Gary Lineker is at it again, calling Just Stop Oil protesters heroes and praising mass migration. I'll be giving Britain's biggest woke hypocrite the red card at 10 o'clock, and you won't want to miss it. Plus your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.uk. Is Schofield's career now over? Let me know. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. And with stories like this, it's not possible. Lots to get through. Let's start with this. So, folks, let me tell you, if you're just joining us on the radio or on television, Philip Schofield, one of the best-known presenters in the country, has stepped down from ITV with immediate effect. He was slated to present a forthcoming primetime show. That's gone. And also an awards ceremony. That is gone. He's been dumped by his agent. They are called YMU. And what's extraordinary is that he owns part of that company. He's been fired by a company that he owns shares in, and he has admitted to lying to his colleagues and the media about an affair he had with a younger male ITV employee. He said, "I'm very deeply sorry for having misled." He has also given more detail about the circumstances of this relationship. Contrary to speculation, whilst I met the man when he was a teenager and was asked to help him get into television, it was only after he started to work on the show that it became more than just a friendship. That relationship was unwise, but not illegal. It is now over. Well, is his career now over? We are going to be speaking to some of the biggest agents in the country, also top TV stars and journalists who are in on this. Let's have a look now at the statement from his agent. They are, of course, YMU Group. They're a massive agency. They represent Anton Deck and many other big stars. And here's what Mary Beckhate, the CEO, has said about that. And let me take it away. She said, "Honesty and integrity are core values for YMU's whole business, defining everything we do. Talent management is a relationship based entirely on trust. This week, we've learned important new information about our client, Philip Schofield. These facts contradicted what Philip had previously told YMU, as well as the external advisors we'd brought in to support him. As a result, on Thursday, we agreed to part company with Philip with immediate effect. Is there anyone this man hasn't lied to about his relationship with the younger man who worked at ITV? Let's get reaction now from GBNews star and somebody that was a regular on This Morning, Bev Turner. Hi, Bev.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Listen, I'm very well. I'm apologising to interrupt that bottle of Pinot Grigio, but your reaction, there it is. It was a good guess. Your reaction to this bombshell story. Schofield dumped by his agent and he leaves ITV with immediate effect.
It's the worst kept secret in TV that Philip Schofield was having relationships with other men whilst he was still married. I was in the studio, Mark, on the day when he did his big reveal with Holly, you know, holding his hand, and it was all very emotional. And we didn't know, actually. I was on there to do the news review, and we didn't know that this particular story was going to break. But there was a weird atmosphere in the studio. His agents were there. Funnily enough, I didn't know Mary. I know Mary Baker, who looks after him. But they're a good team. They're good people that work at that agency. They're going to be all having quite a difficult evening tonight. But I was in the studio that day. We didn't know what was coming. He sat on the sofa. He did his big reveal. And then we had to go in and talk about the other news of the day. But there was obviously just this huge one big story in town. And at the time, I said, I wonder which newspaper is about to out him, because I didn't buy for a second that this was a genuine, you know, kind of suddenly he'd decided to do the right thing by his wife. I just knew he was going to be outed by a newspaper. Sure enough, the next day did a sit down with the Sun, and that kind of answered that question. So I would suspect, call me cynical, that there'll be something else that will emerge over the weekend in the papers and into next week, because it's quite a big thing for his agents to ditch him. He's been with them for years and years and years. So have they got pressure from other clients? That's the other suspicion. You think if there is going to be more darkness which is about to swirl around the brand of Philip Schofield, are there other clients who are saying, we don't want to be associated with this? You know, everybody's very good at turning a blind eye and keeping quiet, but as soon as they think there might be a little bit of kickback on them, maybe they are not quite as supportive of their former friend as they used to be.
Tell me about the Philip Schofield that you know, having been a regular on the This Morning sofa.
Well, he's quite hard to know, I would say. And in fact, I've written a piece on the GBNews website, which has been read by about 500,000. Well, it's not that amazing, but it's been read by 500,000 people in the last 3 days. So clearly people are interested in this topic. He's quite difficult to get to know. I would say, you know, it's like, Mark, when you're hosting a live show like this and you have guests coming in and out of the studio, there isn't necessarily time to chat. So you don't expect there to be tons of conversation. But when I'm doing To The Point with Andrew Pearce every morning on GB News, 9:30 till 12, I make sure that when guests come in, if I've not met them, I will shake their hand. If I've met them before, they normally don't escape without a hug and a kiss, to be fair. But Philip Schofield is quite a closed book. He's a bit of a cold fish. That would be my impression of him. And there were some times when I would try to, you know, we had mutual friends who'd like moved into the same area. I had friends who were his new neighbours, or he'd moved into a street actually just a little bit down the road from me. And yet there was never any attempt to, you know, kind of follow up that sort of conversation. If I was being completely honest, it was almost a little bit like he was hiding something. And, you know, crikey, how exhausting must it have been to hide for all those years when he was married that he was having relationships with men? I mean, talk about, in a sense, there must be a huge revelation, like relief for him that he can now live this life. And now it's all come crashing down. He's come out, he's living the life I guess he always wanted to live. And now what on earth is going to happen to his career?
Well, that's a brilliant question. Do stay with us, Bev. Have a quick swig while I bring on our next entertainment reporter. Who have we got, Greg, coming in? Let's speak to Ellie Phillips now, who is a top showbiz journalist who joins us alongside Bev Turner. You're missing a little glass of something white and strong there, Ellie, but let's get to this story. Do you think that Philip Schofield's TV career is now over?
Yeah. 100%, it's done. There's no way that he can come back from this. I think once an agent's like YMU, for them to have dropped him with immediate effect, for him to have resigned from ITV, stepped down from hosting the British Soap Awards, which were meant to be at the beginning of next month. He's no longer going to be doing Dancing on Ice. There's just no coming back. And at the end of the day, he's 61. Right. I think, realistically, would his career have gone on for that much longer anyway? No, he won't come back from this.
Yes, indeed. Now, listen, let's talk about some of his colleagues. Do you think that, Ellie, this could impact the reputation of Holly Willoughby, his former co-host?
I think possibly. The thing I would say is I'd like everyone to realise who's watching this that what you see on camera in terms of the length of time that, for example, Holly and Phil were on this morning does not reflect what happens behind the scenes in terms of producers working there and your runners and things like that. So when people are saying, who knew, how long did they know for? A lot of the people working there now will not have worked there when this young man was working for this morning. So I don't think it's right to condemn, a whole programme or a whole station because of the actions of one person. I'm not sure how Holly Willoughby comes out of this because they were so close, they were such close friends. But it's also got to be said that one of the reports that came out and one of the reasons that they allegedly fell out so recently is because she said she was upset, allegedly, that he hadn't warned her about what was going to come out about his brother Timothy, who was just last Friday convicted of those 11 child sex offences and sentenced to 12 years in prison. And she has said through people or through rumours or whatever that she didn't know, and that was one of the big problems in their relationship. So was this something that he also hid from Holly? I'm not sure. I think, like Bev said earlier, it's one of the worst kept secrets in the industry. We all know who this young man is. We all know what he looks like. We know where he worked. We know where he went afterwards. We know exactly what happened because everyone knew about it. But until someone was willing to put their head above the parapet and say, this was an affair, this was someone that he met when they were a teenager, that he helped to get into television, and then they started this romantic relationship, until someone who had concrete evidence of that or was firsthand there, it was just rumours and speculation. And so I think I agree with Bev once again, more is going to come out of this in the week to follow.
Well, of course, Mr. Schofield is not here to defend himself. He would certainly challenge any allegations that he had any relationship with somebody underage. That's certainly not an accusation on the table. He has said, however, that though the relationship was legal, it was unwise. Briefly, Bev Turner, very unwise. It's just a very, very bad look for a powerful figure. How do you think he managed to get back on air this week? That's not great for ITV, is it, when they spent a week with Holly and Phil back on this morning, pretending nothing had happened?
I don't know whether you've seen The Morning Show on Apple TV. There is a drama, an American drama, and it's about something which is scarily similar to this. Not quite in the same way, but where the parallel does stand up, which is this idea that the famous, rich, wealthy, powerful man is able to get away with things behind the scenes because everybody around buys into it. Nobody asks the tough questions. Nobody wants to rock the boat. And so really, I think what's happened here is like the ship has started to sink. The ship has started to sink and the rats have scattered. Everybody's just run. Looking after their own skin, looking after their own backs. And I would repeat this, I think it's really important actually to point out that he hasn't done anything illegal. This young man that he had this relationship with, there was clearly a significant age difference, but he wasn't a young person. He wasn't underage for the activities that he was engaging in with Philip. So in a way, maybe that's why the people around him did just turn a blind eye and think, well, we don't want to upset the golden goose. He's laying too many eggs. We're not going to rock the boat here. Let's just keep him on telly, keep it quiet. I don't know how they did it for so long, to be honest. That's what's remarkable, is that he was able to be protected for so many years. And let's see what happens now. I think what's happened with Holly my opinion on this is I've noticed recently she's been on quite a journey, to use that terrible phrase. She's set up this business. She's got a very successful, it's a bit like Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, and it's a brand lifestyle. It's quite good, I have to say. I like it. I like the ethos of the brand. I like the ethos of the products. And Holly Willoughby, you could quite clearly see on the TV, she was getting a bit sick of playing second fiddle to Philip Schofield. She'd been in his shadow for so long. When you're on that sofa, it's quite clear who's driving that program and who is the passenger. And I think she's probably got a bit sick of that. And now, well, guess what? Might just be Holly's time. That's all right.
Well, it might be. Final thoughts on this, Ellie? I've only got a few seconds, so briefly, if you can.
Just going to say as well, I think that the telling thing about one of the statement as well is that he specified that when he left this morning a week ago, that was unrelated to anything that he addressed in the statement today. And that was not even a week ago. So that does lend you to think that more stuff is going to come out. And also, as to what Beverly said, it's not illegal at all. But it does ask the question in terms of, positions of power, dynamics in the workplace, whether it's right or morally right to have, it's not morally right to have an affair, but to have relationships with someone in the workplace when there's such a huge power dynamic difference between them. So they're the questions that are coming out at the moment, and who knows what more will come about this unrelated matter, which he says is why he left this morning.
My thanks to the brilliant Ellie Phillips, showbiz journalist, and the equally highly esteemed GB News star with a lovely glass of something cold and alcoholic, the brilliant Bev Turner, who is, of course, the star of To The Point on GB News. Thank you both. He lied to ITV. He lied to his lawyer. He lied to the media. He lied to his wife and kids. And in my view, with that fake performance last week, he lied to the British people. More on this bombshell story throughout the show. But next up, is Britain becoming borderless? And has the police in this country become institutionally woke? We'll discuss that next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, if you're just joining us, sensational news. Philip Schofield, one of the best-known presenters in the country, a guy who started his career on the BBC presenting children's programmes, has sensationally left ITV with immediate effect, and he has been dumped by his agent. Now, he's been with this agent for decades. They're a massive conglomerate. They look after many other top careers, including Ant and Dec. They're very influential. Well, they've dumped him, even though he owns shares in the business. So it's a massive story. We're going to bring reaction from across the world of TV and showbiz. Is Schofield's career now over? And also, what of the reputational damage to ITV? So all of that to come. But first, Britain's population is on track to overtake France for the first time ever after record high net migration figures hit more than 600,000 last year. And since those figures were released, the Mail newspaper exclusively report that 50 migrants on a rubber dinghy in the Channel were picked up by a border force vessel after refusing to be rescued by a French naval warship. In a 2-hour operation, Border Force vessel Ranger raced from the Kent coast to the centre of the Channel to bring the migrants into Dover. The migrants are understood to have turned down the French Navy's offer of rescue to avoid being returned to France. They arrived at Dover this morning. So will Britain ever tackle the migrant crisis and lower immigration? Let's get the views now of political commentator and former UKIP MEP Godfrey Bloom. Godfrey, apologies for the somewhat truncated conversation we're going to have amid this breaking news story about Philip Schofield. But your reaction to a story that we really ought to be talking about, which is illegal migrants refusing a lift back to France from the French Navy.
Yes, well, this is nothing new about. This has been going on for 2 years. Both the French Navy and the Border Patrol and the British Army and the RNLI have something called standard operating procedures. And you have a standard operating procedure, and the standard operation procedure from the French Navy is to escort these dinghies to English waters from the French coast, where they are picked up by the Border Patrol or the RNLI, moved into hotels, given health checks, spending money, and generally looked after, because mass immigration is this government's policy. They're quite open about it. It's an open door policy. It isn't just Dover. It's flights coming into the country, all over the country, and it's the same thing. And it's happening in Ireland, and it's happening in North America, totally open borders, because it's part of the UN procedure. This is a United Nations protocol.
Will we ever successfully police our borders, or do you think we've got net migration into the hundreds of thousands for many years to come, Godfrey?
Yes, of course we have. As I say, it's government policy. And one of the failures of mainstream media is that they cannot bring themselves to accept it's government policy. It's not an accident. Philip of Spain didn't invade us. Hitler didn't invade us. Bonaparte didn't invade us. The idea that we can't stop this is totally and utterly ridiculous. Of course we could. We don't want to. The government doesn't want to. It's government policy. It's WEF policy, and it's United Nations policy. And Mrs. May, when she was in office, signed up to accept over 100,000. She signed the agreement to bring in 100,000 so-called illegal immigrants, or call them whatever you like, but I mean basically illegal immigrants. So, yeah, you know, it's not going to stop, is it? How can it stop if that's what the government wants?
I wish we had longer, but Godfrey Bloom, once again, dropping the truth bombs. Thank you so much for your time. We'll catch up shortly. Do give Godfrey a follow on Twitter. Always illuminating stuff. Now, this week, the Just Stop Oil campaigners have made headlines for attacking an exhibit at the Chelsea Flower Show. Take a look.
Part of Just Stop Oil. We're asking the government to stop licensing fossil fuels.
Gotta hand it to that lady who sprayed water on the protesters. Give her an OBE. That's what I call a hero. Now, this after police bizarrely handcuffed a member of the public for doing the job of the police themselves and trying to clear protesters off a busy road. This happened earlier in the week. It's gone viral. Take a look. There you go. He tries to stop these people breaking the law and he gets arrested. Well, the madness continues with this morning a man who said he needed to get to hospital taking an unorthodox diversion in his car. Take a look.
Oh my God! Sir. Get out of the way! You're a joke!
This comes days after TikTok prankster Mizzy was given a slap on the wrist for invading people's private homes for clicks. Mizzy, whose real name is Bakari Bronzo Garo, was issued with a 2-year criminal behaviour order for the stunts, which saw him charging through people's homes. He sparked further outrage after later bragging that UK laws are weak, simple as when speaking to Piers Morgan on his Talk TV show. And would you believe it? Mizzy's been arrested again for breaking a court order. So, weak laws, ineffectual policing. What are we going to do about it? Let's speak to former Detective Chief Superintendent in the Met Police, Kevin Hurley. Kevin, I do not recognise our current police force. Do you?
Well, I think frankly, it's not how it would be and how it should be. Many of these different issues that we're seeing happening there. I completely understand why that motorist decided to intervene and move them off the road. I felt really uncomfortable when I saw those two police rushing in quite forcefully and pushing him back. They could have pushed him into the road, however, on the other side. The bottom line on it is we need the police to be robust in dealing with these antisocial activities. And at long last, now that the new legislation has come in, they're rather more empowered. The problem with all these Just Stop Oil cases was that in a recent appeal court case, the High Court judge said that everyone was entitled to disrupt activity as part of protest. And of course, that meant when the police wanted to intervene, they couldn't do that. But yes, I do think we're in a situation with the police that understandably, actually for these young officers who are less well trained than they once were, less well counselled and supervised by their people than they once were, and they know they're subject to criticism being filmed everywhere. Many of them are scared of their own shadow now to execute their powers. And I think all of us must take responsibility, particularly many other media outlets, not so much GB News, who are always critical of anything that the police do. I mean, one of the things that I also look at is this TikToker walking into people's houses. He's doing that because all of us have kind of withdrawn and allowed antisocial behaviour to happen. And he's rather fortunate so far that he hasn't walked into the wrong people's houses, because some people are likely to stab him to death if they come into his house. Or alternatively, when he jumps into someone else's car and says he's an Uber person, whilst I know that this guy's a member of the local boxing club, he may well come across who's a little bit more forceful than him and get his just desserts. We the public have almost, never mind the police, we've given up ourselves of some of our basic rights and saying to people, this is antisocial, let's stop it. I understand that because people are scared about being attacked by yobbery and so on. But in some ways, I wish people, when they're on a train going home and someone starts to be antisocial, causing a problem, if 5 or 6 business-suited people gather together and put that guy on the floor, it's going to make a statement about what's not acceptable. So am I asking for people to be vigilantes? I think what I'm asking is for people to stand up and protect each other. As for the police, I am disappointed at the way in which leadership is so insipid and weak and always seeming to bend over to the latest activist, rather than the fundamental purpose of police is to protect people against wrongdoers. Never mind all of these activities about whether or not you should wear rainbow laces, rainbow epaulets, and so on. And by the way, I hasten to say, I have no issues about people who are gay.
Sure.
But the bottom line on it is the role of the police to be independent. And there are a large number of religious groups, whether they are devout Christians or Muslims, who find aspects of homosexuality abhorrent. Now, the police need to go down the middle, and they need to understand they must be apolitical, and that their fundamental mission is to keep the Queen's peace by protecting people. Another example that really, when I was in, and I used to come in really hard on it, you'd see disorder occurring on the estate with bunches of yobs. The police would turn up, and because they'd come in small numbers, the sergeant or the inspector would say, let's withdraw. And they afterwards, I'd say to them, why did you withdraw? We'd say, to preserve community tranquility. And I would always say, those yobs are not the community. It is the postman, it is the school dinner lady, it's the disabled veteran who live on that council estate and have to put up with that crap from those people. You know, the issue with the police, although they are understaffed and undermanned, is to robustly deal with them. And I used to say to them, call more backup, call more vans, call in local forces if need be, but you do not withdraw and you do not lose in the face of yobbery. And I'm afraid that kind of mental attitude is not one that we see with police chiefs now. It's vacillation.
No. Kevin, I hate to interrupt you. All I can say is I can sense my viewers and listeners cheering you to the rafters. If only you were still in the force. My thanks to Kevin Hurley, Detective Chief Superintendent in the Met Police, former Detective Chief Superintendent. I say former, more's the pity. Thanks, Kevin. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up soon. What a hero. Look, we'll get to more of your thoughts shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up in Dial Dolan. Can't wait for this one. I'll be taking your video calls. Should Nigel Farage re-enter politics to save Britain? Also, more on the fallout from the shock news about Philip Schofield. He has stepped down from ITV with immediate effect, and he's been fired by his agent. So more on that. We're speaking to some of the biggest names in the world of showbiz, TV, journalism and the media. But next up, how about this for a story? We'll speak to comedian and GB News headliner star Paul Cox, who has been cancelled this week. For what reason? For being white. That's next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. It's going to be a very busy show because if you're just joining us, let me tell you, it's a massive media story. Philip Schofield has admitted to lying to ITV and to his agent about a relationship with a younger employee. He said that relationship was unwise but not illegal. It is now over. His agent has fired him. He stepped down from ITV with immediate effect. We will bring you reaction from huge showbiz agents who are lined up later in the show. Also, other TV presenters. Tweets are coming in thick and fast. TV presenter Peter Lloyd, a regular on This Morning and other ITV shows, has said Philip Schofield resigned from ITV, told you he was trash, says Peter Lloyd. And then referring to Holly Willoughby, he's tweeted, she knew, she knew, she knew. Well, we'll discuss the role of Holly Willoughby in all of this drama very shortly. But let's crack on now because there's barely a day goes by that a GB News star doesn't make headlines. And tonight, the wildly talented comedian and Headliners regular Paul Cox revealed that his regular column for a Portsmouth newspaper was recently rejected on the grounds of his skin colour. Apparently, he's too white to have raised the issues in his latest article. Is that even legal? Well, I'm delighted to say that Paul Cox joins me now. Hey, Paul, what happened?
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Yeah, good to see you again. I write basically a whimsical opinion piece for the Portsmouth News, and it was a few weeks ago. And the main piece was essentially a question, which is, should we be looking at everything through the prism of race, gender and sexuality, with a subtext of, is everything really racist? And I pointed out the Bridgerton actor's comments about the balcony at Buckingham Palace being terribly white. And I said, do you know what? I'm pretty sure she never meant too much harm by that, but she probably felt very comfortable to say it because why wouldn't she do in this climate? And I just pointed out, quite whimsically, that if it was to be said the other way round, there would be a problem. And the message that I got back from the editor at the time was basically asking me to rewrite because racism is a very sensitive subject and we don't think that and they didn't think because I was white that I should be talking about it.
Indeed, and of course that, you know, is a pretty painful experience for you. You've had a good relationship with the paper, and I think that the editor is a decent person, but they sound like they've bowed to the woke mob.
Yeah, I should say this, right? I don't have any issues with the individuals. I think all it does show is there's two levels of fear here. One level of fear is they are very fearful that if a white person says something about anyone of any colour, it could be considered to be racist. And they're not fearful that if they say to a white fella, you can't do this because you're white, there's not going to be any reprisals. No one's really going to care about it. And they felt very safe in that.
Indeed. It comes down to the fundamental point, Paul, that it's like Martin Luther King never happened. Judge me on the content of my character, not the colour of my skin. Those amazing words have been forgotten.
Yeah, entirely. Do you know, it's mad, isn't it? Because how can we bring... The idea of everything at the moment is trying to get rid of a lot of sort of pain and division in the world. And one of the best ways to do that is to just open up discussion the whole time. Open up discussion. Talk about things. This was a whimsical piece. People can go and read it. It was on Constantine's Substack. And it's a very whimsical piece. I was making a few quite humorous points, and it was just shut down. The thing that interested me the most is I was given no chance to rewrite. I was given no chance to edit. It was just, no, you can't do it because you're white.
Now, are you keeping this column?
Do you know what? I am. And I am currently. I mean, things might change over the next couple of weeks, but it won't be because I make the decision. It'll be because someone else does. Because the reason I write for Portsmouth News is I was born and bred in Portsmouth. I delivered that paper when I was 13, 14 years old. And when the opportunity came last year to write an opinion column for them, I grabbed it with both hands. And I love writing for the people of Portsmouth. That doesn't change. You know, I don't believe in cancel culture, Mark, so I'm not going to cancel them from me writing for them. And I don't want them to cancel me either. They're in a difficult position now. I don't think they can. I mean, if they can on the basis that my work's rubbish, that's absolutely fine. And Nedra has every right to make decisions based on what he wants or doesn't want within his paper. But my point is, the colour of my skin is irrelevant.
And that should be the national conversation. Paul, I know you're about to go on stage. Your audience awaits. And let me tell you that you are absolutely one of my favourite fixtures on Headliners. Always unmissable. So can't wait to see you back here in the studio soon.
Thanks, Mark. Can't wait to see you soon. Thanks for having me on.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, there you go. Paul Cox cancelled because of the colour of his skin. Quite shocking, isn't it? Is that progress? I don't think so. Now, more on the extraordinary news that Philip Schofield has stepped down from ITV. He's been fired by his agent for lying to his colleagues and the media about an affair he had with a younger male ITV employee. More on that very shortly. Plus, in Dial Dolan next, I'll be taking your video calls with an important question. Should Nigel Farage re-enter politics to save Britain? That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you're just joining us, Philip Schofield has admitted he lied to his colleagues and the media about a relationship with a young ITV colleague, a young male employee. In a statement to the Daily Mail, He said, contrary to speculation, whilst I met the man when he was a teenager and was asked to help him get into TV, is that all he helped him with? It was only after he started to work on the show that it became more than just a friendship. That relationship was unwise but not illegal. It is over now. Well, is his career over? We will bring you coverage across the board. We're going to speak to showbiz agents, TV stars, you name it, after 9 o'clock. It is the showbiz story of the year, if not the decade. Philip Schofield stands down from ITV with immediate effect. No award ceremonies, no primetime series. That is it. Hell will freeze over before you see him back on that channel. Are ITV culpable? Have they covered this up? Have they been sitting on this story for a long time? Are there echoes of Savile? Perhaps not related to crimes, but just an organisation protecting its own. We'll discuss all of that after 9. But it's time now for Dial Dolan. Looking forward to this. I'm taking your video calls. And tonight, The Telegraph's Christopher Hope, or Chopper to his friends, has exclusively revealed that Nigel Farage is considering a political comeback. The GBNews star told Chopper, I'm pondering this carefully to work out what positive goal I could achieve and whether I could break the two-party first-past-the-post system that obsesses people with a wasted vote. My email box, says Nigel, is inundated every day saying you have to come back. He told Hope that he's working out what to do after something snapped in him over the soaring net immigration figures. He added, I'm angrier than I've ever been before. So should Nigel Farage re-enter politics to save Britain? To discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome GB News viewers Lars, Susan and Norma. Susan, welcome back to the show. Do you think we should bring back Nigel to save Britain?
Yes, I do. And thank you for inviting me back, Mark. If you look back at Nigel's track record, he spent 25 years of his life trying to get us out of the EU. And he's also been the person that's been the main spokesperson worried about the immigration figures. And anyone who's worried about Brexit or the figures that came out yesterday, they should also be wanting Nigel to come back at the forefront of politics. Down in the Blue Wall, which is the south of England, there are 30 Tory seats, some of them where there's major Tory people like Ian Duncan Smith, Theresa Villiers. They're defending a majority of less than 10%. So those 30 seats, they're up for grabs. And I think if Nigel came back as a politician and candidates were studying those areas, I think they're there for the taking, because I don't think Labour would get them. You can't trust Labour. For years, they've been calling us names, anyone who's been concerned about immigration. They've spent years and years trying to overturn the democratic vote to leave the EU. And now all of a sudden, they're going to stop the boat and they're going to implement Brexit. So we know we can't trust the Tories. We know we can't trust Labour. So there's Nigel, who we know we can trust to implement Brexit and to do something about the immigration figures. So, yes, Nigel, your country needs you.
There you go. What do you think about this, Lars?
I think there's far too many political parties at the moment. And I think wasn't Nigel responsible for reform and Brexit? So, or at least the Brexit party. I do find it, the problem with having more political parties, you just end up splitting, particularly right-wing ones, you end up splitting the Conservative vote, which then opens the door for Labour and Lib Dems to come in. That's the problem you have, is you have too many parties, it just dilutes the votes, and you end up with a Labour government by accident almost. That's where I am. I do also think the Conservatives need to actually deliver on Brexit and actually stop these votes and stop whimpering to lawyers and actually put legislation in that's going to block the votes from coming through.
Well, yes, the attraction of Nigel Farage, my colleague here at GB News, a massive star on the channel, an extraordinary broadcaster, and a man that is among the most significant political figures of the last 100 years in this country. He's a proper Conservative, Lars, and many of my viewers and listeners are attracted to that. Do you think there's still time for Rishi Sunak to become an actual Conservative Prime Minister?
There is, but it all depends on his cabinet and what they're going to do. I think it's quite hard, and it's an uphill struggle, if I'm honest. And I've been a Conservative member since '98, so it's not great to be a Tory at the moment, if I'm honest. But they do need to deliver on the promises for Brexit. I'm in the fortunate position. I'm half in, half out, because I've got dual nationality, so I'm German and British. So I've kind of got the best of both worlds in one way or another. But I do think it's going to be a struggle.
You're half in, you're half out. I bet you say that to all the girls. Let me ask our final visitor to Dial Dolan. It's Norma. Norma, briefly, if you can, do we bring Nigel back? Could he make a positive contribution to this country?
Well, I think we're scraping the barrel a bit. I mean, it would be terrible to lose him from GB News for a start.
Correct.
Is he a great leader? He's charismatic. He's opinionated. Does he get things done? He would claim he gets things done. He's a successful businessman. He's not going to earn much being an MP. It would have to be a labour of love. If he encounters too much failure, as he might perceive it, I think his personality is such that he'd lose patience. He failed to save Britain via Brexit. He failed to see all the pitfalls that occurred with Brexit. It's not good enough to say, oh, well, it's not really Brexit. It could be that his ideas are too grandiose and he's too optimistic. He doesn't calculate sufficiently, in my view, for the weaknesses of others in implementing a plan. It may be that he's just too much of a one-man band to be the kind of leader that could dominate on the world stage. I think he was a dismal failure in the European Union. I mean, he just made enemies.
Well, I'll tell you something.
For me, a successful leader is somebody who convinces everyone that he's right and takes the people with him.
OK, well, listen, let me tell you, Norma is not convinced. Norma, thank you for that. I wish we had longer. Thank you to Lars, Norma and Susan for their calls. Do you think Nigel could reboot this country? Sadly, we don't have a presidential system. Otherwise, he'd be a shoo-in for President Farage. Next up, more on this explosive story. It's a developing story. Schofield out of ITV, fired by his agent because he lied to everyone. More on Schofield next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight, and we bring you an extraordinary developing story if you've just joined us. Philip Schofield has stepped down with immediate effect as an ITV presenter. There will be no primetime series, no award shows. He is out of ITV, a channel at which he has worked for many years of his career. He's one of the best-known presenters in the country. He has admitted that he lied to his colleagues in the media about an affair with a younger male ITV employee. Did ITV cover this up? Is his career over? Was Holly Willoughby an enabler? We will cover all of those stories in what is the showbiz story of the year, if not the decade. Also, in my big opinion, why the BBC is now using taxpayers' money to censor the public. More on this free speech scandal shortly. My Mark Meets guest is one of the most recognised actors on TV, star of Hello Hello, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale, and most memorably as the eccentric shop manager Reg Holdsworth in Coronation Street. And I'm looking forward to this in my take at 10. Saint Gary Lineker is at it again, calling Just Stop Oil protesters heroes and praising mass migration. I'll be giving Britain's biggest woke hypocrite the red card at 10 o'clock, and you won't want to miss it. Philip Schofield will never present a show for ITV again. He's been dumped by his agents, who are called YMU Management, massive agency who look after Ant and Dec and some of the biggest stars in the country. He helped found that agency effectively because he was co-opted as talent at YMU. He owns shares in the business. Well, they fired him, sacked by his agents, sacked by ITV. Why? Because he lied to his wife. He lied to his lawyer. He lied to the Daily Mail, which, in my book, you never do. He's lied to the British people. That fake week of shows that he did last week, going back into this morning with Holly Willoughby. What a Farage. And are ITV guilty of a cover-up? All of these issues we will be covering. We're going to speak to top agents, TV stars, and you name it, for what is a massive, massive story. It's all to come. But first, the news headlines.
Thank you very much, Mark. The latest from the GB newsroom with me, Rory Smith. Philip Schofield has resigned from ITV after admitting to having an affair with what he called a younger male colleague at This Morning. He told the Daily Mail he lied about the relationship to his wife, to ITV, to colleagues, to friends and to his agents. Schofield admitted helping the man get into television when he was a teenager before developing a consensual on-off relationship with him. Philip has stepped down from ITV with immediate effect, meaning he won't be presenting the British Soap Awards next week or any other show on the channel. He has apologised, saying the relationship, which is now ended, was unwise but not illegal. A man has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years for the murder of 15-month-old Jacob Lennon. Jake Drummond, the partner of the toddler's mother, was jailed following a campaign of cruel and sadistic abuse. The boy suffered multiple injuries over a 3-week period in 2019. The victim's mother, Louise Lennon, was jailed for 10 years for allowing Jacob's death. Well, in other news, the parents of a 10-month-old boy who murdered him on Christmas Day in 2020 have been jailed for life. Finlay Bowden's mother, Shannon Marsden, was given a minimum term of 27 years, whilst his father, Stephen Bowden, was given a minimum sentence of 29 years. The baby was taken into care just shortly after birth due to child protection concerns, but he was put back into his parents' care just 39 days before he died. Police say the pair were jailed for what they described as an incomprehensible crime.
Bowden and Marsden, from the moment Finlay returned to their care, throughout the trial, after conviction, and even at sentence, have never taken responsibility for their actions. They lied and obstructed professionals who were attempting to see Finlay to establish that he was being cared for in the correct manner.
A man who shoved Just Stop Oil protesters off the road earlier this week has told GB News he felt he had to take matters into his own hands. Scaffolder Louis Greaves pushed 2 people from the group who brought traffic to a standstill in London on Tuesday. He was briefly detained by police on suspicion of common assault. Well, he told us he was doing the work he says the police should have been doing.
So, of course, there was already troubles on the railways anyway. And I had to get off the train station. I was in the car and all that, trying to get over the bridge. And then, of course, they're just standing there, making me even more late for work. And there's 2 police officers just standing there looking at them. Like, they're not doing their jobs. So if they can't do it, then the members of the public start doing it for them.
TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, though, back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. And it's the only story in town, folks. If you're just joining us on DAB+ or on television, Philip Schofield has stepped down as an ITV presenter with immediate effect. We know that he'd already essentially been pushed out of This Morning. Was he fired? Did he jump? Well, now he's leaving ITV altogether, and he has sensationally been dumped by his agent as well, YMU. Now, why has he lost his agent? Why has he left ITV? Well, because he has admitted that he lied to his colleagues and the media about an affair he had with a younger male ITV employee. We're going to bring you full reaction to this bombshell story. It is the Showbiz story of the year, if not the decade. In a letter, in a statement to the Daily Mail, a paper that he has lied to. He lied to everyone. He lied to his wife. He lied to ITV. He lied to his lawyer. He lied to us, the British public. Well, he said, I will reflect on my very bad judgment in both participating in the relationship and then lying about it. He argues he's protected the privacy of this person he had the relationship with. We don't know what state they're in at the moment mentally. But the bottom line is, it's a shocking scandal. And should ITV be held to account? Is this a cover-up? After all, many are speculating that ITV and their bosses and the team at This Morning have known about this for 4 years. And they continued to do all those shows pretending that nothing had happened, that all was rosy in the ITV garden. So we'll bring reaction to this massive story. We're going to speak to a top showbiz agent, TV stars, you name it. We've got this story covered. In my big opinion, why the BBC is now using taxpayers' money to censor the public. More on this free speech scandal shortly. And my Mark Meets guest is one of the most recognised actors on TV, star of Hello Hello, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale, and most memorably, the eccentric shop manager Reg Holdsworth in Coronation Street. And in my take at 10, Saint Gary Lineker is at it again, calling Just Stop Oil protesters heroes and praising mass migration. I'll be giving Britain's biggest woke hypocrite the red card at 10, and you won't want to miss it. Mark Dolan tonight is also the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages at exactly 10:30. with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. And unlike this morning, Mark Dolan tonight is not 2 or 3 hours of fakery. There's no pretending. There's no smoke and mirrors. What you see is what you get, baby. From me and my pundits, Alice Grant, Michael Crick and David Oldroyd Bolt. No skeletons in their cupboard. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, is Alistair Campbell right that politics should be taught at primary school? Should you be allowed more than 12 points on your licence? And is being a wedding guest now too expensive? Plus your emails, mark@gbnews.uk. Lots to get through. We start with my big opinion. Good news, folks, you're paying to be censored. If you thought woke Silicon Valley and tech giants like Facebook, YouTube and Twitter before Elon were bad, look closer to home, where the state-run broadcaster has launched a new platform George Orwell could only have dreamed of, BBC Verify, in which their crack team of journalists, I use the term loosely, will set about unearthing dangerous misinformation. What dangerous misinformation might that be? Perhaps if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID, an outright lie propagated by the mentally challenged leader of the free world, Joe Biden. That lockdowns will do more harm than good, that an attempt to stop a respiratory virus will always end in failure. Is that misinformation? Let me draw your attention to China this week, who fear they may suffer 65 million weekly cases of the virus by June. So much for zero COVID. Speaking of China, was it dangerous misinformation to speculate that COVID probably came from a lab, given that Wuhan is home to a coronavirus research centre? If you'd said that early in the pandemic, if you had said that COVID came from a lab, you would have been called a conspiracy theorist loon. Was it disinformation to encourage people to be healthy during the pandemic, given the fact the virus clearly discriminated against age, metabolic health and body mass index? People who recommended vitamin D, for example, a natural substance directly linked to a healthy immune system, were called right-wing and granny killers. Now, dangerous misinformation does exist. It always has. And no doubt it has been supercharged by social media. But so has failed government messaging like stay home to save lives or wear a mask to save the NHS, all propounded by the BBC. Plenty of top medics pushed back on this, but went unreported on the Beeb. Decades of pre-pandemic mask research, 3 years of a real-world experiment, a pandemic, and the gold standard Cochrane review into those filthy muzzles suggests they achieved little, if anything. Was a policy of recommending masks in order to stop a tiny virus the real misinformation? You tell me. It's my view that you might as well have worn a pair of yellow underpants on your head and you'd have had the same effect. Now, I've got no problem with any news organisation or journalistic outfit calling out lies and so-called misinformation. That's what every journalist has to do. It was ever thus. But the BBC doesn't need some dystopian department paid for by the great British public to have their freedom of speech and freedom of thought policed so maniacally. Particularly when they say they'll be tackling right-wing conspiracy theories. Interesting. Not left-wing conspiracy theories, an example of which might be saying a biological man can change his sex and become a woman. Now, that's what I'd call dangerous misinformation. Was COVID modelling misinformation, given it consistently overstated the risk from the virus? Imperial College and Professor Pantsdown Neil Ferguson predicted 500,000 deaths. It was Armageddon, which spooked our government into a disastrous set of policies which have left us with a broken country, poorer, angrier, sicker, more divided, and with a generation of damaged kids. And notwithstanding the human, economic and societal damage from lockdowns, excess deaths have been raging at over 2,000 a week, pointing to a total failure of a policy designed to save lives. Who the hell are the BBC to verify anyone with their perceived bias in reporting of Brexit, which alienated millions of licence fee payers, and with their one-note coverage of the pandemic in which we had to lock down, in which we had to wear a mask? I don't remember a single question from a BBC journalist pushing back on lockdowns or mask or vaccine mandates. It's all I did for 3 years, thank God. The Beeb should have spent less time in hospital wards creating hysteria and more time acknowledging shattered businesses, closed schools and children's playgrounds taped shut with masking tape. What the hell were we thinking? And where were BBC Verify then to call out this madness? So the BBC is going to verify us, but who's going to verify them? Yes, there are some dangerous nutters out there spouting nonsense on the internet. But there's no one individual or organisation who I would trust to give me their version of the truth, least of all the BBC, given the ideological groupthink of that organisation. And who decides what is and isn't disinformation? As the last few years have shown, in many cases, misinformation plus about 6 months equals the truth. OK, folks, give me your reaction to that. Mark at gbnews.uk. Let's get a reaction now from my top pundits, political commentator Alice Grant, journalist and author Michael Crick, and writer and broadcaster David Oldroyd-Bolt. Michael, you've worked for the BBC for a number of years. Your reaction to the birth of BBC Verify?
Great news. Journalists should always check their facts. That's what this department is all about. It seems to be what you're calling for in your rant. The more we check our facts, the more robust we are, the more sceptical we are, the better the journalism. Now, I accept that there was a time during the COVID pandemic where perhaps journalists didn't ask enough questions. I wasn't a mainstream journalist at the time.
You've never been a mainstream journalist, I'm delighted to say.
Well, I've worked for mainstream outlets.
You're a disruptor.
Yes, that's true. And disruption and asking questions that other people don't want to ask, or daren't ask, or whatever, is, to be encouraged. And that, I think, is part of good journalism. And I hope that's what BBC Verify is all about. But to go on and on and on about COVID and all that, and
it's the
denounce the BBC through that.
I mean, the
BBC. I mean, a YouGov poll out today shows that of all the media outlets in the kingdom, the BBC is most trusted by the British public. And GB News is way down, about 2/3 of the way down the list. So I'd be careful if I were...
We'll have to raise our game.
You will.
And I do acknowledge that the Beeb is a world-class global brand. But my objection is not necessarily to the legacy of the Beeb as a news provider. It's this department, BBC Verify, in which a coterie of North London Liberals are going to decide what is the truth and what isn't.
Well, who's to say whether they're North London Liberals?
I disagree with you entirely. I actually think Mark also mentioned a really interesting point in your monologue, which is the fact that they're going to start labelling and deciding for themselves what are conspiracy theories. But of course, we've seen so many conspiracy theories in the past which have turned out to be reality, such as many people who voiced concerns about COVID in the beginning and about the efficacy of vaccines and of masks. And we were labelled as conspiracy theorists, even on extremely important political issues such as the European Union. Back in the day, those who were concerned, very rightly, about the way in which the European Union was amassing the sovereignty of European nations were silenced as, oh, you're crazy, this is just a trade project, this is just, this has nothing to do with the political, what they're creating. But, back in the day, those are the conspiracy theories, and many of them have turned out to be reality. So I think I'm very concerned with, as Mark said, this coterie of people who are going to be deciding for themselves what is truth.
David, I thought that the BBC Verify were caught red-handed when they did their unveiling that they were going to find right-wing conspiracy theorists. Now, those do exist, but neglecting to mention conspiracy theorists on the left.
Well, I think conspiracy theories in general should be looked at and analysed. Michael's right that there should be an examination of facts. My problem with the BBC is that it seems over the past quarter of a century to have moved away from facts and towards a more emotional reaction to stories and events and a more emotional framing of current affairs. It seems not to be sticking to the old Reithian values as it was founded a century ago. As to its trust for the British public, that's because it's had a century and it's had an essential monopoly over much of that time over current affairs, over news, over elections. And so, of course, it's got sort of institutional trust. I think that's perfectly reasonable. GB News has existed for 2.5 years. It's not going to have anywhere near the same level of trust because it hasn't had the same degree of time to bed in and build an audience. But on the BBC Verify, I think it is an obvious case of the BBC trying to direct the tenor of public debate and discussion about what is considered acceptable, what is considered beyond the pale, about which opinions will be given primacy and which will be called conspiracy theories or which will be considered to be the loony fringes of the internet. And I don't think that this is something the BBC should be doing, and I don't think it's something we should be happy about it doing. Those at home who think that it already has too much power, write to them and tell them.
And Michael,
this is your own
we're paying for this Orwellian censorship.
Well, the licence payers are paying for it. Yes, and the licence payers should be paying for fact-checking. That is what this is.
No,
it's not about conspiracy theories or right-wing... I mean, it was stupid of them. If they used that phrase, that was a stupid thing to say.
I thought the mask slipped, Michael, there. The anti-conservative bias within the Beeb.
Well, I accept, and I've spoken about this publicly in a lecture at Oxford University a couple of years ago. But things are changing within the BBC. They are, I mean, for instance, the BBC governors this week instituted a survey, an inquiry into their coverage of immigration. So some of the left-leaning tendencies of the BBC, I think they're starting to deal with. But that's not what this is about. This is a fact-checking service, and every journalistic outlet ought to have a fact-checking service. It's a more professional way of doing things than just accepting what other journalists, accepting what the Daily Mail says.
Well, indeed, but shouldn't
the Guardian.
But shouldn't it be an internal process, not an external thing of we have decided in our wisdom, in our oracular position as the BBC, that these are the correct facts?
Okay.
It should be an internal process of journalistic verification.
And they should publish the results.
Michael Crick is not being censored, but the clock's against us. We'll return to that. What do you think about BBC fact-checkers? Do you trust them? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up, more on the sensational news that Philip Schofield has left ITV with immediate effect, and he's been dumped by his agent. Why? Because he lied to the media and his employers about a relationship with a young man working at ITV. It's an extraordinary story. More on that shortly. Plus, good news in terms of pushing back on trans madness. Let's cover that story in just a moment, but essentially all I'll tell you is that trans women cannot now take part in British cycling. All of that is next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Well, if you're just joining us, Philip Schofield has been fired by his agent. He has apologised via a statement to the Daily Mail for lying to his employers and his own family about a relationship with a young ITV employee. He has said that the relationship was legal, but unwise. Well, I should say so. He said the relationship is over. Well, it looks like his ITV career is over. He's left the channel. He had been due to present the prestigious British Soap Awards next week, a role he's performed since 2006. He won't be doing that now. No primetime series either, which were mooted by ITV. So what next for Schofield and what next for ITV? Is it the mother of all cover-ups? They've been sitting on this story, we're told, for 4 years. So will they suffer reputational damage? We'll speak to some top names about the Schofield story very, very shortly. Let me know your reaction, Mark at gbnews.com. It's time now for another big story, but actually let's get quickly reaction now from Debbie Arnold, who is an actress, producer and friend of Phil and Holly. Hi, Debbie. Thank you for joining us. Your reaction to the news that Philip Schofield has lied to almost everyone in his life.
Wow. I mean, it's quite astonishing. But what is even worse is the fact that ITV knew about this for so long, didn't they? And they just sat on it. And I think it's made the viewers look silly. It's like a story from someone in your family because they all loved him. Everybody loved him and believed in him. And he lied to everyone. It's like a love affair that's over, isn't it?
Indeed so. Do you think that ITV will suffer reputational damage? Some are likening this cover-up to the BBC and Jimmy Savile, not in relation to Savile's evil crimes, but a powerful organisation protecting a valuable asset.
Yes, exactly. But why? I mean, why should they do that? I also think it hasn't done Holly any favours either. I mean, everybody always knew what was going on. When he came out in whatever it was a couple of years ago, they must have known then. What were they doing? What were they trying to achieve?
Could Holly Willoughby be characterised as an enabler, even if she wasn't? Could that be the perception?
I think so. I mean, that's because she knew about it. That's why she was so upset. But I wonder what happened to make this happen just now. Was it to do with his brother? Why has this suddenly come out now? Something has happened.
And what about that fake fest? A week of shows last week in which the couple pretended they were best mates and that nothing had happened. What an insult to ITV viewers.
Yes, what an insult. What an insult to everybody's intelligence, that no one could come out with it and say, this is what happened. You know, we are feeling like this. It's a huge lie. And I'm very, very sad that they've done that because it means that we can't trust them anymore. You know, there's something like This Morning. It's part of a family, isn't it? People watch it for years and years and it feels like you're part of your family. It means that you've been lied to. It's not a good thing, and I don't know how ITV are going to get themselves out of it.
Debbie Arnold, do you fear for the future of the This Morning brand?
Yes, I think so. I fear for Holly, actually, and I know because she's been his friend and it must be devastating for her, but I think This Morning brand is tainted. I do. OK, and how well do you know Philip, and does this story surprise you? Well, no, I mean, I know him vaguely. You know, I've met him over the years quite a few times. I met him when he did Joseph and seen him, and I've actually been interviewed by him a couple of times.
Who was this Joseph he did? Oh, I see. Sorry, the West End. Yeah.
Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, for goodness sake.
I thought it was another boyfriend. It's hard to keep up.
That is terrible. That is really terrible. But anyway, yes, and I've been interviewed by him a couple of times on This Morning, and he's always been very charming to me. So I personally don't have any beef against him, but what I do have the beef of is that ITV knew about this and they protected him. And especially at this time, with the Me Too movement and everything else that's going on, people are coming out about things. They should not have done that.
Last but not least, briefly, if you can, Debbie, does this kill Holly Willoughby's career? Does it impact her trajectory?
I think it does, but I think she should do something. I think she needs to tell the public, because we're not stupid, what's happened and why this happened. She can't just carry on as if it hasn't happened, can she? Or can she?
Debbie, thank you so much for your no-nonsense appraisal of this media bombshell story. Debbie Arnold, actress, producer, and someone that knows Philip and Holly very well. Thank you so much. There we are. Well, what a conversation. Let's move on to some good news before we go back to Schofield. British Cycling has become the latest governing body to bar transgender women from competing in the female category to safeguard the fairness of the sport. So has common sense prevailed? Let's speak now to Kelly J. Keane, who is a feminist icon, one of my political heroes, and somebody who stands up for women's biological rights. Hi, Kelly J.
Good evening.
Your reaction to this ruling?
Well, for a start, I'd like to just say they've banned men from women's sports, which, fellas, you're just not wanted. We've been talking about this for a long time, since sort of 2015. This is a thing that brought me into this issue because I had no idea what was going on. But men aren't wanted in women's sports. In elite sports, we don't want them in our changing rooms. We don't want them in our five-a-side. They are just not wanted. Women's sports is not just about podiums. It's about togetherness. It's about team. It's about women. And it certainly isn't about men. So, fellas, could you just leave us alone?
Do you not think, though, that referring to somebody that identifies as female as a fella would be insulting or even offensive?
Not as much as calling them a subset of women, no. And I think actually we just have to go back to what we all know to be true, and we need to stop pandering to their ideology, because the first thing an ideology will want from people that it chooses to oppress and recruit is to take our language. And quite successfully, from your introduction this evening, they've managed that somewhat. So I just think we have to call them men. I've frequently called them men and blokes and fellas, like I would any other man.
Emily Bridges, who is a biological male who identifies as female, has condemned British Cycling's new policy barring transgender athletes from competing as women. She's called it a violent act and called the governing body a failed organisation. Do you have any sympathy at all?
Absolutely not. I mean, look, there are very young males who have been convinced, sold a lie, that if they say it enough times in the mirror, they will genuinely turn into a woman and they can force everybody else around them to believe it. I think actually once you're a grown-up, you don't get away with that quite so easily, that sort of idiocy that you can really force everybody to just succumb to whatever it is that you say you are. We all learn that as teenagers when we all try to be a little bit better than perhaps we are. So, no, I don't really have any sympathy for him. I think he was quite happy to steal the spot of a woman in cycling. So, no, time's up. This is ridiculous. We all know that it's ridiculous. And it's about time that sporting bodies did it. They've said elite cycling. I think they really need to keep those men out of women's changing rooms too. And they seem to be a little bit woolly on that. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's not fast enough and it's not far enough as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think this war on woke ideology will be won? Will women get their female-only spaces back? Or are you fighting a losing battle, do you think? What does your gut tell you, Kelly J?
Well, my gut tells me, Mark, and I can clearly see you don't tune into my YouTube, that I actually never lose. So we're at a stage where all we have to do, there's people that are convinced by woke ideology and stand to gain something from it, goodness knows what. There's the likes of people like myself who know that it's all a load of nonsense. And then there's a lot of people in the middle who have no idea what's going on. And our job as people who know what's going on is to tell the rest of them just exactly what's at stake. And then we know they'll agree with us. So it's simply, bigger battles than this have been won through history. And this is just another one. And the truth, I really do think, will prevail.
Kelly J. Keane, a privilege to have you on the show. Do check out her rather brilliant YouTube channel. Very compelling stuff. And she's absolutely right. She never loses. It's not possible, not on her watch. Remarkable stuff. Well, look, coming up next with the pundits, is Alistair Campbell right that politics should be taught at primary school? Also, should you be allowed more than 12 points on your licence? Isn't that a bit limiting? And also, is being a wedding guest now too expensive? You found it expensive? And don't forget, coming up, more on the media story, the showbiz story of the decade. Philip Schofield steps down as an ITV presenter, is fired by his agent. More on that next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Channel.
Britain's news.
Welcome back to the show, reacting to the big stories of the day. Political commentator Alice Grant, journalist and author Michael Crick, and writer and broadcaster David Oldroyd Bolt. If you're just joining us, Philip Schofield has sensationally stepped down as an ITV presenter. He's been fired by his agent. Now, this is an agency that he owns shares in. He's gone because he lied to them. He lied to his lawyer. He lied to the Daily Mail. He lied to his wife, his family, and ITV viewers. He insulted them with a complete fake fest of a week of shows last week in which he and Holly pretended nothing had happened. Well, a lot had happened. ITV, we're told, have been sitting on this story for 4 years, which is his admission of a relationship, an affair with a younger male ITV employee. Contrary to speculation, says Schofield, whilst I met the man when he was a teenager and was asked to help him into television, it was only after he started to work on the show that it became more than just a friendship. That relationship was unwise, but not illegal. It is now over. Well, is it the mother of all cover-ups from ITV? Is it the end of Schofield's career altogether? Would you want to watch him on a rival network? We'll discuss that. Plus, is Holly Willoughby an enabler? Did she know all along? And will that impact her squeaky clean persona? So we'll get to all of that very shortly. But Alistair Campbell has said that politics should be taught in primary schools. He advised that the lessons for children could be called arguing, policy or big issues. So is he right? Primary school kids having lessons in politics? Well, I wonder about this because our young people are already quite radicalised, David. Do we really want 5-year-olds shouting about the Tories?
I don't think they need lessons in politics. We could well make a case for lessons in civics to teach them how systems of governance work. We could, we used to have this class called history where you learnt about the evolution of parliamentary democracy and representation. I think there's a case to return to that. But the idea that children should be taught about politics in what sounds like a rather partisan way, not that Mr Campbell, of course, is in any way partisan in these suggestions. He's, of course, doing this out of the goodness of his heart and the beneficence of his care for the nation. I think the point would be that that children and most adults don't know that much about the way that the system works. They don't know about the differences in unitary authorities, in metropolitan borough councils, in county councils. They don't know really what the function of Parliament is beyond 649 people going there to argue every Wednesday afternoon shouting at each other for half an hour on television. So I think there is an argument that greater education is needed, but certainly not in the form that's been suggested, and certainly not if Alistair Campbell's devising it.
Alice, you are a young person. What do you think?
Said.
You're closer in age to some of these youngsters than we are. Your reaction to the idea of... he's an old head on young shoulders. But your reaction to this, primary school kids. I'm worried that if it's left-leaning teachers, all the kids will be learning is that the Tories are evil.
Of course. I mean, look, it's already the case at politics A-level that you're being taught a very partisan view. Why shouldn't it be that at primary school it's going to be the same thing? Because the teaching establishment is made up with the same kind of opinions. And I think I'm all for children being taught how to think critically and freely. I think free thinking should perhaps be on the curriculum or proper debate, but not politics, especially at primary school level. And I think Alistair Campbell kind of betrays himself here by suggesting that it should be called policy, because really I don't think 5-year-olds are interested in discussing policy. I think they'll just be fed lies by their teachers and forced into a certain way of thinking.
Michael, I would argue society already has too much politics. We don't want to do that to our youngsters, do we?
Well, I think, what Alistair Campbell is arguing is that people should learn how to argue and how to advance a case.
Age 7 or 8?
Yes, I think. Well, they do have disputes at that age, and if it can be controlled in a way and they can be taught how to be courteous to each other and debate amongst themselves. There's always been a much greater tradition of debate in American schools, for instance, than there is here. And I think it's a jolly good thing. And actually, it's part of the reason I think that Americans are more articulate. Whether teaching primary school children about the differences between all the different councils you've got, I'm not even sure I understand the differences between all the councils.
You mentioned Americans being more articulate. The president notwithstanding. I think you're right. Now, nearly 100,000 drivers are at risk of losing their licence if they're found guilty of one more motoring offence. These drivers could find themselves banned with another 3 points, which would push them over the 12-point ban threshold. So, given the fact that it's so easy now to be done in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, ask Suella Braverman or the Archbishop of Canterbury, should there be more than 12 points on your licence? What do you think, Alice?
I think this system needs a lot of reform, including the 20-mile limit in London, which drives my father crazy as well. It's just ridiculous at this point. They're trying to basically pedestrianise the largest city in England, and it's the same across the country. It really ought to be reformed.
12 points is a bit restrictive, don't you think, Michael?
No, I've been lucky enough that I haven't had any points so far, but I've been very, very lucky. The 12 20-mile limit in London, I think is a jolly good thing. I just wish they put more signs up, because you never know whether you're on a 20-mile limit or a 30-mile limit or whatever, and I'm going to get caught eventually. No, look, keep it at 12, because if you put it up to 15, say, then people would just be more reckless. They'd drive faster and they think, well, it'll be all right until I get to about 6 or 9, and then I'll slow down a bit. You know, our roads are safer than ever. Let's keep them that way.
OK, well, look, the average wedding... can we spool ahead, folks, because I want to share this story with our viewers. The average wedding guest can expect to pay over £1,000 this year from booking travel, accommodation and buying a new outfit. Attending a wedding now comes with a hefty price tag. So is it worth it? Is being a wedding guest worth the money? David?
Of course it is, because you're there to recognise the happy solemnisation of your friend's union.
Did you say the happy sodomisation of your friend's union?
Your mind works in such mysterious ways.
Can we just say each to their own? It's a free country.
On this buying of a new outfit...
Never been to one of those weddings.
Well, you wait until Philip Schofield asks you. You went
there.
You might have to say that wearing a different outfit for a wedding is unnecessary. You just go with the traditional old morning coat, which you wear out until it falls to bits. Obviously, a different matter for women. I think the wedding listing is where it's becoming silly. What's wrong with just giving people your time and attention? What's wrong with turning up, saying, well done, going to the wedding breakfast, having too much champagne and then going home? I hate the idea of destination weddings. I think it's a gross imposition on people. But if you're going to the local parish church and looking after your friends and family on their happiest day, then wonderful.
Well, the problem is, Alice, very often these days you'll have spent $500 on the stag do or the hen party in Barcelona or Las Vegas.
Well, it hasn't been my experience. A few of my friends got married, and again,
you need to change your friends.
The parish church. It was really beautiful.
Oh, that's good.
It was lovely, and you know, maybe it's just us Catholics.
But then you find when friends have a wedding and then they do it abroad, that's an act of war in some ways, isn't it? Oh, we're getting married in Madrid. I hope you don't mind.
I've not been lucky enough to be invited to any of those, I don't think. But this £1,000 figure is absurd. It's totally out of touch with what most ordinary people will spend on going to a wedding. And also remember that if you stay overnight in some nice place, well, that's only like going away for the weekend, and only you've got a wedding as well. So, but the figure, it's nothing like that. I don't know where that figure's come from. It's ridiculous.
Well, it depends who you know, of course. But
yes, I suppose it does. Yes.
Let me tell you, I've cleaned out my bank account with my happily married friends. I hope those marriages last. I can't afford a sequel. Look, lots more to come. More on the fallout from Philip Schofield has left ITV, sacked by his agent now. ITV have spoken out. My reaction next. Plus, we're going to get the views of a big ITV star straight after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So let me bring you up to speed. Philip Schofield has admitted affair with a young man, an admitted affair on this morning. A colleague who he knew as a teenager helped him get into TV. They began a relationship, not illegal, but unwise, says Philip Schofield. Schofield has added, I will reflect on my very bad judgment in both participating in the relationship and then lying about it. I've got to say, we've got bids in for quite a few people, but there are plenty in the world of showbiz who have said they'll come on the show and changed their mind. Pauline said, Mark, you've been telling us about powerful agents who are going to be on the show. Don't announce these things if they're not going to happen. They're pulling out because people are still afraid of Philip Schofield. So, Pauline, we had that booking and we lost it, but I'm delighted to say we do have an ITV star in just a second. ITV have made a statement on the departure of Schofield. He has essentially left the organisation now. ITV say, we are deeply disappointed by the admissions of deceit made tonight by Philip Schofield. The relationships we have with those we work with are based on trust. Philip made assurances to us, which he now acknowledges were untrue, and we feel badly let down. We accept his resignation from ITV and therefore can confirm he will no longer be appearing on ITV as had previously been stated. Well, do ITV have a case to answer? Have they been sitting on this story, Savile style, for the last few years? Let's speak now to another major ITV star, a man recognised for so many roles, star of Allo Allo, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale, but most memorably as the eccentric shop manager Reg Holdsworth in Coronation Street, Ken Morley. Hi, Ken.
Mark, there you are.
Great to have you on the show. Your reaction to the resignation of Philip Schofield from ITV, his admission that he lied to his lawyer, to the Daily Mail, to his family, to his employers, his agent and us, the British public.
Yes, that's right. Well, my father once said to me that if all the thieves and the liars had to leave England, the place would be a desert in a fortnight. So about the lying, that's one thing, but it's pretty serious stuff. What gets me is how much people in the ITV who've been close to him for several years, and indeed the lady who shares the couch with him, knew about everything, really. So I look forward to hearing this. But I do hope people are not throwing themselves under buses tonight at the thought of it all. You know, I know it's pretty hectic in the metropolis at the moment.
I mean, maybe we should offer words of support to Schofield. Is the media overreacting to this story? He has said the relationship was unwise but not illegal. It is now over. He knew this chap when he was a teenager and was asked to help get him into TV. Schofield says it was only after he started working on the show that they began a relationship. Is there a problem? Was it inappropriate? Does Schofield have a case to answer?
Well, I don't know how. Now somebody getting a job.
We've just lost the line to Ken. Ken, does Schofield have a case to answer?
Well, I would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, it's obvious, you know, when you suddenly jump off and close everything down and people close it down for you, obviously it's pretty serious stuff. So in the next few days, you'll find out just how serious it is, or not, as the case might. You know, it's pretty strong stuff. Yes.
Tell me about your time at ITV, and does their behaviour in essentially covering up for a powerful star sound familiar to you? Do the actions of ITV surprise you, given the fact that media insiders are suggesting that ITV management knew about this for 4 years?
Well, either they knew about it or they are collectively suffering from myopia and deafness. It's as simple as that. You know, you're all working together in one building. You know, it's just a short time ago that when Mr. Schofield declared that he was in fact gay, there was a tremendous feeling of help and congratulations that he'd been brave to come out and explain his true feelings. Do you remember that? Everybody was very warm-hearted and sorrowful, really, for the agony he'd suffered in making this decision. That seems like light years ago now. But, you know, they say everybody is innocent until found guilty, so I stand back and watch, as indeed you will be doing over the next few days. That's the way it is. But Hollywood had a long history, don't forget, of covering up the most likely of associations between people and their relationships. You know, that's the way it is. And he was a very powerful guy in ITV for many years, it has to be said. For me, it's rather weird. I never actually watched the show because I was always working in the morning. So I'd never actually seen him. But I know, like everybody else, that this is a pretty serious matter. And I look forward to seeing the result in the next few days.
Yes,
I do.
Ken, briefly, do you think that although Schofield is not accused of any crimes here, there's no suggestion that this chap was underage or anything like that. It was a legal relationship. But are there echoes of the Savile cover-up in terms of ITV's actions?
Well, I mean, look, the gay community sometimes live on a knife edge. I mean, you know, everybody now understands the reality of being gay and what it means, and nobody's persecuted as in the past. But, you know, history has shown that sometimes people make a dreadful mistake and perhaps have a very strong emotional relationship with somebody who is under the legal age. And it also has to be said, and I've come across it many times, people have told me that young people today look a lot older than they actually are in real time.
Let me interrupt you there, Ken, because there is zero evidence that, of course, this young man was underage. He wasn't underage.
No, that's right, no.
Yeah, I should, you know, be very, very clear about that. And that nothing illegal has happened, but clearly unwise is what Schofield has said. Is there any hope for Schofield now, Ken?
Well, the point is this, the gist I was trying to make was that when you apply for a job, you go through a process of applying for it, and there are several people, and you get chosen for your abilities. I thought the main point was that he had helped the chap into a job merely because of a personal relationship. I don't know whether that's the main point about it.
Friendship,
yeah. But I was going to ask something entirely different, but I don't know. You obviously want to stay with the story tonight.
Well, no, listen, we need to talk about your career. We must get you back on. I do hope you will revisit the show. Obviously, Coronation Street, a role that changed your life. Do you miss that role? Do you miss Reg Holdsworth?
Not only me. No, not just me, Mark. I still get people coming up to me and saying, all right, Reg, it's 30 years ago.
Well, that is how vivid your portrayal was. Listen, we've got to get you back on soon. You've reacted to this bombshell story, and a thrill to have you on, a privilege. And thank you for helping us explore this remarkable showbiz drama. Ken Morley, Reg Holdsworth in Coronation Street, Allo Allo, you name it, so many TV hits. Emmerdale, do join us again soon. Well, look, more from the fallout from the departure of Schofield. He's left ITV. And he will not return. So what for his future? What for the future of ITV? Is the brand of This Morning imperiled now? All of that. But next up in my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with woke Gary Lineker, who thinks Just Stop Oil are heroes. That's next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight, and we bring you a bombshell story. Philip Schofield has stepped down as an ITV presenter. ITV have accepted his resignation. He's been fired by his agent, and the reason why: he lied about a relationship with a young employee at ITV who he met as a teenager, helped them into television. They began, so Schofield tells us, a full relationship once he was of a legal age and when he was working for ITV. So the bottom line, folks, is that he's out. His career at ITV is over. What are the implications for this morning? What are the implications for Schofield and Willoughby? We will cover all of that very shortly. In my take at 10, St Gary Lineker is at it again, calling Just Stop Oil protesters heroes and praising mass migration. I'll be giving Britain's biggest woke hypocrite the red card at 10 o'clock, and you won't want to miss it. And Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages from exactly 10:30 sharp. There will be no primetime series, no awards ceremonies. He is out of ITV. He's lost his agent. The guy owns shares in that company. Why is he out? Well, because he lied to ITV. He lied to his family. He lied to his lawyer. He lied to the Daily Mail. And he lied to ITV viewers. We will bring you more on the fallout from Philip Schofield's shocking admission in the course of this hour. Lots to get through. First, the headlines with Rory Smith.
Thank you very much, Mark. Well, as you've been hearing, Philip Schofield has resigned from ITV after admitting to having an affair with what he called a younger male colleague at This Morning. He told the Daily Mail he lied about the relationship to his wife, to ITV, to colleagues, to friends and to his agents. Schofield admitted helping the man to get into television when he was a teenager before developing a consensual on-off relationship with him. Philip has stepped down from ITV with immediate effect. That means he won't be presenting the British Soap Awards next week or any other show on the channel. He has apologised, saying the relationship, which is now ended, was unwise but not illegal. A man has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years for the murder of 15-month-old Jacob Lennon. Jake Drummond, the partner of the toddler's mother, was jailed following a campaign of cruel and sadistic abuse. The boy suffered multiple injuries over a 3-week period in 2019. The victim's mother, Louise Lennon, was jailed for 10 years for allowing Jacob's death. Well, in other news, the parents of a 10-month-old boy who murdered him on Christmas Day in 2020 have been jailed for life. Finlay Bowden's mother, Shannon Marsden, was given a minimum term of 27 years, whilst his father, Stephen Bowden, was given a minimum term of 29 years. The baby was taken into care just shortly after his birth due to child protection concerns, but he was put back into his parents' care just 39 days before he died. Police say the pair were jailed for what they described as an incomprehensible crime.
Bowden and Marsden, from the moment Finlay returned to their care, throughout the trial, after conviction, and even at sentence, have never taken responsibility for their actions. They lied and obstructed professionals who were attempting to see Finlay to establish that he was being cared for in the correct manner.
A man who shoved Just Stop Oil protesters off the road earlier this week has told GB News he felt he had to take matters into his own hands. Scaffolder Louis Greaves pushed 2 people from the group who brought traffic to a standstill in London on Tuesday, while he was briefly detained by police on suspicion of common assault. He told us he was doing the work he says the police should have been doing.
So, of course, there was already troubles on the railways anyway. And I got off the train station, I was in the car and all that, trying to get over the bridge. And then, of course, they're just standing there, making me even more late for work. And there's 2 police officers just standing there looking at them. Like, they're not doing their jobs. So if they can't do it, then the members of the public start doing it for them.
TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, though, back to Mark.
Brilliant stuff. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. A very busy hour to come. We're going to talk about Philip Schofield. It is the showbiz story of the year, if not the decade. He's been fired by his agent and he has stepped down from ITV entirely. He was slated to present the British Soap Awards, a role he has performed since 2006. Well, he's not doing that anymore. How the mighty have fallen. And he won't do any primetime shows for ITV. His agents have fired him, even though he's been with them for years and years and years and owns shares in the company. Schofield is out. Are ITV guilty of a cover-up? Some insiders are suggesting they knew about his relationship with a young employee for 4 years. Is this an example of a powerful organisation protecting a prize talent? So more on the fallout from Philip Schofield's sensational departure from ITV in the minutes ahead. Mark Dolan tonight is also the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30, plus tonight's headline heroes and back page zeros. Let's kick off with my take at 10. St Gary is at it again. The holier-than-thou sports presenter and Britain's first black footballer, Gary Lineker, has been to Italy to receive a humanitarian award from Amnesty. Couldn't we have an amnesty from this virtue-signalling numpty who rails against our unequal society and the poor treatment of migrants, but was broadcasting from the Qatar World Cup in stadia literally built by modern-day slaves, 6,000 of whom literally boiled to death in the midday sun or fell from scaffolding as they constructed his theatres of dreams? Lineker's latest offering is that Just Stop Oil protesters, who are disrupting people's lives and risking an accident or death as they block major roads, are in fact heroes. That's right, Lineker has them down as heroes. This from Britain's most famous millionaire socialist, a man fresh from successfully battling HMRC to reduce his tax bill by several £1 million. And of course, he's back on the case, speaking in rosy terms about immigration, whilst safely insulated from its real-world impact of depleted public services, a housing crisis and community tensions. Fair play to Gary for having taken in refugees over the years, and he's clearly passionate about this issue. But as migration figures reveal an extra 600,000 people entered the country last year, he's going to need a bit more space in that granny flat of his to accommodate them. Some have called Gary brave. Indeed, absolutely. Lineker is truly heroic and brave as he tweets from the luxury of his London mansion. How brave to virtue his signal and to make himself look like such a lovely guy when he won't be affected by the consequences of an effective open border policy, which is depressing wages, serving as a disincentive to Brits to get back to work, inflating the cost of rental properties, impacting communities and devastating public services. It's not Gary, but the millions of people who watch Match of the Day who will pay the price as their rent doubles, as they struggle to get a GP appointment or find a place in the local school for their kids. Now, if Gary Lineker was not employed by the state-funded national broadcaster, he could make these points all day long, no problem, just as I am on this show. But his status as the most high-profile and best-paid presenter on the Beeb gives him an undue influence on the national conversation, and in my view threatens the reputation and threatens the hastening the downfall of the organisation itself, the BBC, as millions of Brits, exasperated by the colossal scale of migration into this country, are puzzled as to why one of the organisation's biggest stars is such a fan. By having a dig at Home Secretary Suella Braverman and making a parallel between the Rwanda plan and the horrors of the Holocaust, Lineker is effectively calling the millions of Brits of all colours worried about the impact of mass migration as racist bigots. It's insane to think that net migration of 600,000 a year isn't a problem. And it's an issue that Italy, France, Germany and the United States are grappling with as well. If a country can't police its borders and have a sensible level of migration into the country, then it has fundamentally failed. In my view, Gary Lineker is on the wrong side of every argument. He's out of touch with the mood of the British people, and he's entitled to be. He can say what he wants, but not whilst in the pay of the state broadcaster, who will literally send old ladies to jail if they don't make their contribution to his £1.7 million salary. Gary Lineker has just picked up a gong from Amnesty International. Well, I've got another award for him, Britain's biggest plonker. OK, folks, now let's get your reaction to that. Mark at gbnews.uk. Do you agree? Do you disagree with Gary Lineker's concerns about Gary Lineker? Listen, what we have to do is we have to focus on the issue here. Gary Lineker is a popular presenter. He represents the views of so many people in this country. So does he have a point? He's worried about migration, he's worried about this, he's worried about that. Your reaction, please let me know. Let's get the views of my pundits tonight. I'm delighted to welcome Michael Crick, Alice Grant and David Oldroyd-Bolt. OK, Michael, your reaction to the idea that Just Stop Oil are heroes?
I think oil protesters overall are heroes. Yes, they've taken a really important issue, which is the destruction of the planet, which you don't seem to care about, and they're doing their bit. Now, their tactics, I would say at times, go a bit far, but overall, I think they are heroes. But I think the problem with your rant there is you're getting two issues mixed up. And if the presenter of Match of the Day had come out and said, immigration's got to stop, we shouldn't let anybody back into the... You know, if he'd come out with views like yours, or if the presenter of the Match of the Day had said that stop oil concessions should be arrested, you wouldn't be complaining. You wouldn't be complaining. You'd be quite happy. So on the issue of whether the presenter of Match of the Day should be expressing views or not, I think you've probably got double standards. Personally, I don't think the presenter of Match of the Day should be making their public views because he's the highest paid person in the BBC and it does affect the reputation of the BBC. But actually on the views he's expressed, I have a lot of sympathy with them.
OK, David Oldroyd-Bolt, your reaction to the comments this week of Gary Lineker?
Well, I agree with Michael. He simply shouldn't be making them in this position. As we've said before, very often whenever we have to discuss this tedious man, if he wants to make those points, and if he wants to make them in public, using his enormous influence, his social media following is vast, and his means are vast, he should step down from Match of the Day and either enter the political arena or be an independent campaigner. As long as he's being paid for by the poll tax of the licence fee, he simply shouldn't be making political statements of this nature. And I should say that if he was saying that immigration should be cut, just as I'm saying that when he's saying that immigration is not a problem, because it should be a fundamentally disinterested and unbiased position that he holds in the public sphere.
OK, I mean, Alice Grant, looking at, for example, this issue about his tax bill, he successfully demonstrated to a court that he was not an employee, but he was self-employed. So he's not a tax avoider. But I still think it reeks of double standards that this man who's so worried about global poverty and inequality, he's so woke, he's Britain's most famous socialist, that he should go to court to bring his tax bill down.
I know, it's very typical of this kind of the establishment, I think. I completely agree with what the panel said, that he shouldn't be voicing his opinions when he's being funded by British taxpayers, and his opinions themselves are actually very far removed from what the British public think, especially on issues like open borders. I mean, I think if you're advocating for that, that's very selfish and not thinking at all about the good of the country. So I disagree with his opinions. I also think that on issues like Just Stop Oil, they've actually caused so much harm to our nation. And I think when you turn to publicity stunts in order to get your argument across and you can't actually hold public debates, then
Michael,
you have no argument.
Protesters have turned to publicity stunts throughout the ages. I suspect you've done it yourself once or twice.
I was always,
from the suffragettes through peace protesters, whoever.
I think when you have to turn to, blocking roads, causing public chaos, breaking the law instead of actually having an open debate, and instead of actually having discourse like the adult world, and when you have to turn to childish publicity stunts, I think you've lost the argument. So I have absolutely no sympathy for people who claim to actually care about the planet and are continuing to hurt people of our nation. So I stand very strongly against the Just Stop Oil protests. OK,
well, look, we shall resume this conversation at 10:30 when the papers come in. My thanks to Alice, Michael and David. And let me tell you, Schofield is all over tomorrow's papers. You won't want to miss a second of that at exactly 10:30. And we've got so much more. A statement from Eamonn Holmes, GBNews star, of course, the man that knows Schofield very, very well indeed. And we'll be hearing what he's got to say very shortly. Plus, politics legend Christine Hamilton and a top showbiz agent as well. All of that is next, responding to the fallout from Philip Schofield, admitting he lied to ITV and pretty much the whole world about his relationship with a young employee at ITV. More of that to come, don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. A big reaction to my take at 10. Gary Lineker has called Just Stop Oil heroes, and he's also spoken in rosy terms about migration into this country. Sue says, hi Mark, Lineker has fought HMRC about the amount of tax he pays. He leaves it up to us, the British taxpayer, to pay for all of his illegal immigrants. Yet again, double standards. Paul says, listen, Gary Lineker is a good guy. He speaks for many people who have compassion and want to offer refuge to those who need it the most, a very British trait. It's all about opinions. Keep it coming. Mark at I've got to get this right. Mark at gbnews.com, because our email address has changed. Right, Philip Schofield has left ITV. He has been fired by his agents as well. And the reason why is because he lied about a relationship with a young employee at ITV. He said that the relationship was legal, however, unwise. He said the relationship is now over. Is his career over? Well, we've got reaction from GB News star Eamonn Holmes, who, of course, used to present This Morning. And Eamonn has said Schofield has finally been caught out, but he's not the only guilty party. 4 high-up members of ITV management knew what sort of man he was and never once took action to prevent him controlling or taking advantage of his position over young people. Devastating verdict from Eamonn Holmes. Let's get the views now of politics legend, author, political commentator, celebrity spouse, Christine Hamilton. Hi, Christine.
Mark, hello. Well, you can't gainsay what Eamonn Holmes said because he had a ringside seat for a long time, so he knew. It's exactly what I want to know is when did ITV know? They must have known. When did they ask the salient questions? It's been common gossip. I won't say common knowledge, but it's been common gossip for ages about this younger relationship. So they must have known. Why didn't they do anything about it? They've been trigger happy to kick out other people like Piers Morgan and Jeremy Clarkson, etc. What is it about Philip? We had all the Q-gate business. That's when I first began to lose all faith in Philip Schofield. I mean, I was pretty horrified when he came out and said he'd been living a lie with his wife all those years, but, you know, that happens. The Q-gate business, I thought, was appalling. When he and Holly, don't forget, they had been caught out. Instead of saying, OK, we did jump the queue, but and I'm sorry, we shouldn't have done it. They tried to justify it by saying, oh, you know, we were doing it on behalf of the viewers who couldn't be there. the whole thing, it is extraordinary why ITV hung on to him for so long. Goodness knows what might be about to come out. Maybe this younger person, is going to do a kiss and tell story. I mean, I don't know. And there's also this question, there's a super injunction hanging around, and we don't quite know who's got that super injunction. Could that be Philip Schofield? What is hanging around? But the real big question is, why did ITV not act sooner when, frankly, all the evidence was there, and they must have known. They must have known.
Yes, now, Christine, several media insiders are suggesting that that super injunction does not relate to Philip Schofield, and the reason why this story has been sat on for 4 years is just the power of this guy. But if that's the case, it'll be very damaging to ITV.
Incredibly damaging to ITV. I mean, nobody should be bigger than a great big channel like that. I mean, it's extraordinary. You'd think that Piers Morgan was pretty big. Anyway, he was gone in a flash because he criticised Meghan Markle, for heaven's sake. You do wonder what Philip had on them. Clearly, whatever it is gone. I mean, OK, he might have been very good at live broadcasting. You're very good at live broadcasting, but nobody is indispensable. And it is a complete mystery why they supported him for quite so long, when there are plenty of other people who could present this morning, plenty of other people who could do it, and they will come along and they'll be doing it. So it is extraordinary. I'm not a media insider, so if you're telling me that this super injunction is not Philip Schofield, then fine. But you do wonder what he had on them, this power that he had to stop him being sacked. I mean, OK, he presented Dancing on Ice and the Soap Awards. Millions of other people, hundreds of other people could do that perfectly well. So why did they have to hang on to Philip Schofield? It's extraordinary. But I mean, what a fall from grace, because he was the golden boy 20, 30, 40 years ago, probably, he was the golden boy. And my goodness, what a mighty fall. What I don't understand is, surely ITV said to him, now look, Philip, there are all these rumours about you having a relationship with X. They would know who it was. Is this true? Either they didn't ask him, or they did ask him and he lied through his teeth about it. Now, that is, either way, it's pretty extraordinary. You'd think that he would fess up when he was presented with clear evidence of what he must have known that they knew.
I think he revealed his true nature, Christine. He lied to his lawyer, he lied to ITV, he lied potentially to his colleagues on This Morning, to the British public, his family. No one was spared, Christine. Do stay with us, because we now welcome top showbiz. And his wife, most importantly. Let's speak to, stay with us, Christine, top showbiz and sport agent Sky Andrew. Sky, your reaction to this?
My reaction is that firstly, you should let Christine host the show.
Correct.
Secondly, look, we've got deaf taxis and agents not saying good things about each other, but here we go. His agent dropping him is significant. And I'll tell you why, because the mark of a good agent is something called critical management, where when a client is in trouble, that's when you come out and then you protect them. But his agent has obviously decided that he's just not, you can't protect him. If you look over the length of his career, there's been different issues that his agents have dealt with very well to protect his image. But I suppose it's just come to a stage where it can't be protected anymore. And for me, the last thing an agent does is drop a client that's making them a whole load of money.
What do you think will the fallout be for Schofield? Is his career over now, Sky?
I mean, as I said to you, there are certain people in this showbiz world that are nearly untouchable, or they are such big household names that everyone just sees them as a safe bet to put on TV and to have as a client. This is really bad for Schofield, because not only has ITV dropped him, but his agent has dropped him. And so now he's got to rebrand himself. And I think that with the public, once they don't believe you, it's very difficult to get back on that bike. I mean, the legend that is Bob Monkhouse always said, the key to success is faking sincerity. And once the public don't believe you and they think that you're insincere, I'm afraid there's no way back.
Listen, please stick around because we've got to get the papers next, but we'll hear more from Sky Andrew, Christine Hamilton and my top pundits on the media and showbiz story of the year. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's the showbiz story of the year. It is time now for tomorrow's papers, who are reporting across the board on the departure from ITV of Philip Schofield, one of its biggest stars. The Sun lead with the following. Phil, I lied over affair with young aide. Axed by agent, quits all ITV roles. The Daily Telegraph. Schofield, I had affair with young male colleague. Also, defeated Russia, still a threat to Britain. This is the outgoing head of the RAF in an interview with The Telegraph. We must say less and do more, says Equality's boss, who faced coup. The Daily Mail, showbiz bombshell. Schofield tells the Mail, sorry I lied to you over affair with much younger man when I was married. Also, Equality chief witch hunt probe put on ice. An investigation into the Equality's watchdog was suspended tonight. Amid fears of a witch hunt, the Mail had exposed an apparent plot by staff to oust Kishwa Faulkner over her stance on trans issues by accusing her of discrimination, bullying and transphobia. Also, world exclusive, Bill Gates' Russian lover and Moscow spy, Anna. The plot thickens. The Times now, extra £10,000 to woo more teachers from abroad. A global search is to go underway to fill maths and science posts from abroad. Daily Express. Not again, BA. Travel chaos ruins holidays. Thousands of travellers had their holiday plans plunged into chaos today as BA cancelled nearly 200 flights following a systems failure. And Philip Schofield admits lying to cover up affair with young colleague whilst still married. Weekend, Schofield apology. Also, austerity on trial. Osborne summoned to COVID inquiry over NHS cuts. Daily Mirror. Schofield bombshell. Phil affair storm. Star sorry for lies on relationship. Agent axes him and he quits awards. Guardian. UK set for recession before next election. Written with glee there by The Guardian. Also, vaping pressure for single-use ban to deter under-18s. OK, folks, and we got the Star here. Let's just move on now to... Oh, yes, we do. Daily Star. Here we go. Schofield quits ITV after admitting I lied about affair with young man. We'll get to my pundits very shortly, but let's get further reaction now from top showbiz agent Sky Andrew and media personality and author Christine Hamilton. Now, Sky Andrew, you're a top agent, and you've mentioned it's significant that Philip Schofield has been dumped by his agent. He hasn't broken the law. He hasn't actually done anything wrong per se. So why have they dropped him? Do they know more than we do? Oh, that we just lost the line there to Sky. Christine, why didn't I ask you that question? Do the agents know more than we do?
I'm not as well qualified as Sky, but yes, I think they probably do. And he has betrayed and he's lied to them. He's cheated them. And if you can't work with somebody when the bond of trust has gone. And if an agent can't trust their client, then why would they want to go on having him as a client? And let's be honest, he's not really going to earn them any more money, is he? Because he's not going to get any more work. So if they were being purely commercial about it, what would be the point in keeping him on? But I think the real thing is, I don't know, Sky will be able to tell you about this agency. You cannot represent somebody if you cannot believe what they tell you. And as we've been talking, Philip Schofield has lied. I mean, primarily, he's lied to his wife. I think that is the biggest lie, frankly. And then he's covered it up and he's covered it up. And also the other thing that I find deeply disturbing is that, and I'm not going to say anything illegal, don't worry, but when he first became friends with this young man this morning, that young man was underage. And so the question of possible grooming
allegedly
comes in.
We don't know that for sure.
And I'm not allegedly, I'm not saying anything illegal has happened, but no, it's no surprise that the agents have dropped him. I mean, if they'd like to pick me up instead, then here I am. Try me.
You would do a brilliant job, let me tell you. You could do any job in telly, Christine. Do stay there. Sky Andrew is back with us, top showbiz agent. It's very clear, it's abundantly clear from the statement that Schofield had a relationship with this young man, perfectly legal relationship, and unwise, he said. But the agent has dropped him. Do they know more about Schofield than we do?
I can tell you, from over 25 years of being an agent and having to handle many situations like this, that there's more to this story. Agents don't drop clients that even if they get in trouble, I mean, look at Jeremy Clarkson, right? Jeremy Clarkson, there was a time when people were like, this guy will never get a job, and now he's earning even more money and working more than he's ever done. So with someone like Philip Schofield, he's such high profile, but the belief of an agent is, okay, then you've hit rock bottom. Christine will tell you that her and her husband had their times and they've bounced back and now she's running your show. So at the end of the day, an agent is never going to drop a client unless they believe that it's irretrievable. And so in my eyes, I'm looking at this situation and saying, nah, this doesn't make sense to me. You know, they're okay. So we're in 2023 where people can't castigate you for being gay. So there must be something else here. What's going on?
Yes, Christine, I would ask you though, what has Schofield done wrong? He's had a legal relationship with a young man, which is maybe, you know, a bit embarrassing. It would be the same if it was a young woman, but he hasn't broken the law. So why are people rushing to judgment on Schofield here?
Sorry, is that to me or to
Sky? You, Christine. Christine, why are we judging Schofield? What's he actually done wrong, apart from being a disloyal little shit?
And you might say that, I couldn't possibly comment. But as I said earlier, this current fall from grace, I wasn't remotely happy, shall we say, when he revealed that he'd been leading a lie with his wife. But his real current fall from grace, for me, started with Qgate. And I just thought, hang on a minute, this man is not good. And yes, of course, an agent will keep you on, but not, as I said earlier, not if you are lying to them, not if you don't tell them the truth, and also not, Jeremy Clarkson, however embarrassing he might have been, the agents knew that, there's a lot of life left in Jeremy Clarkson, and he's going to go on being on our screens and elsewhere for a very long time. To me, Philip Schofield, but Sky will answer this, to me, he's completely hit the buffers. I cannot see who is going to pick him up, who's going to want him to front their show. I can't see anybody. So, and I don't think any agency would want to be associated with somebody who has behaved in the way that Philip has. He has behaved appallingly. He's betrayed everybody, from his wife, Holly, ITV, you, me, everybody. He's lied absolutely prodigiously, and no agency can put up with that, surely. However brilliant he might be.
Briefly, Christine, what about Willoughby? Will she be perceived and characterised as an enabler? Insiders are suggesting she's known about this for a long time. I have no evidence of that. But will she get caught up in the collateral damage? Does it threaten her career too? And what about This Morning? Will we still be watching that show in a year's time?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a great morning television person anyway, so no comment on that. But look, I'm not an insider, but yes, it's difficult for me as an outsider to believe that Holly didn't know quite a lot. So she has, in a way, you might say she's been very loyal and she stood by Philip. But I think she will, she's very beautiful. She's very good at her job. I think she will be able to walk on from this. That would be my take on that. But I feel she must have known rather more than the rest of us did for quite a long time, yes.
OK, Sky Andrew, last but not least, couple of seconds if you could. Will the This Morning brand still be with us in a year's time? Is the future of the show now under threat? And what about damage to ITV and its reputation and its share price?
In this country, everything is about credibility, whether people genuinely believe in credibility or whether they don't. But once you lose your credibility, the political side kicks in, and it's very difficult for you to go on. People now will look at This Morning as a show that isn't credible. And the vast amount of people that watch the show are mothers, single mothers, and women. And women are very tough on situations like that. Women will look at you and say, oh, so you're not credible. So you were telling me porkies. So you're not who you say you are. And that spells a very dark ending.
Indeed. So, Sky Andrew, Christine Hamilton, a brilliant contribution to this developing story. We'll catch up soon. Let's get the views now of my top pundits tonight. They didn't expect to be discussing Philip Schofield. Political commentator Alice Grant, journalist and author Michael Crick, and writer and broadcaster David Oldroyd-Bolt. Your reaction, you enthusiastically listened to the words of Christine Hamilton earlier before the break. Your reaction to what she had to say?
Yes, I think she made some incredible points, especially about the issue of dishonesty. I think for the British public, we care very much that our presenters who we invite into our homes through the television are people of integrity and honesty. And I think the crime here really is just the total dishonesty with the people around him and with the British public. And moreover, the fact that obviously there's something really uncomfortable about the fact that he met this young boy and was lying to his wife about it. I think that's really, it is scandalous, and I don't think at all that's right.
Michael, a brewing storm for ITV.
Possibly. I mean, I agree with Sky Andrew. There clearly is some bigger aspect to this story that we don't know about yet, because if you actually look at the three aspects so far, presenters in television have been having affairs and lying about it for as long as I've been in television. Indeed, one or two may even work for this channel. The other aspect, the age difference, well, you know, in the modern... What is there actually anything wrong with an age difference in itself? Are we not in danger of being ageist here?
That's
the
right.
third thing about
rock stars dating a 16-year-old fan may be a little embarrassing, but not illegal.
Exactly. And nowadays, I mean, is there an element of homophobia about this story? There has to be more to this story than we're being told, and no doubt it will all tumble out in the days ahead.
What about ITV, though? Are they culpable? Have they been sitting on a story? Is an example of...
Well, it depends what the thing is we don't know, doesn't it?
An organisation... Well, I mean, already sitting on this story, if allegations are true that they've known about this for 4 years, does that cast out...
But what were ITV supposed to do? Were they supposed to say... I mean, it would be it would be the first time, I think, that a television company had sacked a presenter for having an affair. I can't recall it in the history of television. As I say, it's a frequent thing in show business and in television. I mean, maybe we're now moving into a world where that is much less acceptable than it used to be.
Let's put the hypotheticals then.
Yeah.
What if you've got a star on TV who begins a friendship with a young girl, helps her get into TV, and when she turns 16, they begin a full sexual relationship? Would that raise an eyebrow? Would that presenter keep their job?
It is a problem. But also, if you are in television, I mean, it probably happens to you. People do approach you and say...
Can I just say my team don't find me remotely attractive?
But do you not get people approaching you, Mark, and saying, can you help me get into telly?
He's had his birthday, he's in his 30s, I'm fine.
Do you not get people approaching you, writing to you?
Where's this going, Michael?
A love confession.
I think that... do you mean Mark Dolan tonight groupies?
Indeed, yes.
Yeah,
how do you cope with them outside? I mean...
I have to beat them off.
We shouldn't...
But I mean, look, of course, you know, and the thing is we don't want to be pious about this. David, your thoughts?
Well, that's the problem, is there's a terrific tendency of the British public, if they feel that they've been taken for mugs, to bay for blood before actually deciding if there has been some real injustice committed. And that's whipped up, particularly by the tabloid press, because, surprise, surprise, they want to sell papers. I think the best thing to do with this is to reserve judgment and be a little sober about it and wait and see what the full truth of the story is. Frankly, I don't really care whether or not he's had an affair. That's between him and his wife, and you know, the immorality, you might say, was that he tried to play it for tears and say, well, yes, I've been leading a double life and isn't that awful, and I should have been able to be myself. And he tried to get people's sympathy. And I could well understand, if you were one of his views, that you would feel mugged off, you'd feel that you'd been taken for a fool. But on the issue of whether or not he had a relationship with a young man, if there was no illegality, then ITV were well within their rights not to expose it. It's a commercial organisation. Why would they sink themselves?
Let me ask you at home, is this story an example of how fake establishment media are? The bottom line is that Holly and Phil went back on TV last week, pretended nothing had happened. They didn't even address the story. I thought that was an insult to viewers of the show. Your reaction to this big story, and also my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros. All of that to come. More from Schofield Gate after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Now, in just a moment, we will return to the Schofield story. He's been sacked by his agent for lying about a relationship with a young man who was working at ITV. He's apologised. So we'll go back to Scogate in just a moment. But first, let's have a look at a story in the Times. Extra 10,000 to woo more teachers from abroad. David.
One of the things about this story that's annoying me is that it's yet again an instance of our overemphasising STEM subjects at the expense of the humanities. C.P. Snow said that we're a country driven by 2 cultures, that of the scientific and that of those who are interested in the arts and culture. And I think that there's this massive idea that unless everybody studies coding, unless everybody studies technology, then everybody's going to be left behind and AI will do us out of jobs. Look, if AI continues as it is, there are not going to be those jobs. So why not study things that are going to provide you with a well-stocked mind and what some would call a hinterland? Why not study things that enrich your life if you don't need to know how to code? And I think the idea that we should be paying teachers from abroad £10,000 when there are probably teachers either working part-time or who are retired but could be brought back if they want to be brought back in, if their pensions are suffering as a consequence of the cost of living crisis and of inflation, I think there are ways around this that don't require importing foreign teachers.
Yes, I mean, that's the issue, isn't it? That we've just got this very lazy approach now, Michael, where we ship in the best from elsewhere.
And there's not enough long-term planning. I mean, you obviously see it even worse in the health service with the shortage of doctors and nurses and constantly bringing them in. And it's been known for decades that the shortages are going to arise. And the Treasury does nothing about it. Jeremy Hunt, I remember having a long chat with him about this when he was Health Secretary. Well, now he is in charge of the Treasury. It's still a problem.
No, precisely. It's not dealing with this long term. It's just a short term quick fix, and that's obviously not what we need for our nation in the future, in the long run.
Daily Express, not again, BA. Travel chaos ruins holidays. We need the Great British Getaway, Alice Grant, and we can't have bad news like this. 200 flights cancelled following a systems failure, plus rumours that there's going to be terrible traffic at Dover this bank holiday weekend as people try to get a well-deserved break.
Yes, it's a shame. We have to get our act together.
We've got to make it easier to leave this country, not get into it. Can we talk also, Alice, about The Guardian? UK set for recession before the next election. Written with such glee by The Guardian, because I think that there is a political and media elite who celebrate every failure of this country because of us leaving the European Union, and therefore they proudly announce that we're going to have a recession. I doubt it'll happen because the modellers have been consistently wrong for the last year now.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be kind of hysteria whipped up by the left-wing media, but I do think it's important that we do scrutinise our politicians, especially in the way they handle economy. After all, I was very suspicious of Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor and creating all these policies, which just seemed to be very irresponsible with taxpayers' money. And I think that if the Tories are really serious actually about winning the next election, then they have to turn things around, because currently they're doing a terrible job. And over COVID, we saw so much harm done to businesses and households. So they really ought to start implementing actual conservative economic policies, I think.
Michael Crick, the Britain-hating IMF have had to reverse their forecasts. Apparently we were going to have a year-long recession. Now we've got growth. Meanwhile, Germany goes into recession. Did they have Brexit too?
The growth's not very good. And remember...
It's anemic. But it's been the biggest upgrade, I think, in the history of the IMF.
If you go by growth per head, which after all is what affects all of us, and you allow for the 600,000 net migration figure, plus growth in population due to difference between births and deaths, we could well be in recession right now in terms of GDP per head, which is...
There's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
There is, yeah.
There is. But I just think that it strikes me as another potential non-story, because that's the issue with the IMF and OECD forecast for Britain, is that they fit the narrative that Brexit has been a failure. Yeah. And then when they have to reverse their predictions and say that actually Britain will avoid recession, Germany will not, they don't mention that, and they certainly don't apologise.
No, there's an old dictum with statistics that you should always wait for the revision, which in economic terms is doubly the case. But I think it's just such a lazy narrative. That as you say, every time there is a negative prediction from the IMF, OECD, then the left leaps at it and says, look, this proves that we're an absolutely failing country, rather. And when there are good figures that come out about our economic performance, about, say, the rise in literacy rates, they're terribly keen to underplay it because it doesn't quite fit with the narrative that everything is failing here. And I just think, come on, come up with something more interesting.
What has been the good bit? I can see how Brexit has perhaps helped over Ukraine, perhaps helped over COVID. But in what way has Brexit notably helped the British economy so far?
Well, it has fulfilled a democratic mandate.
But we're talking about the economy here. In what way has it helped the economy so far?
Well, we've struck a trade deal with the CPTPP, which is the largest trading bloc in the world, bigger than the EU once Britain joined it. That's going to be pretty useful. Also, from 2016 to 2022, we had higher growth in service exports than Germany, Italy and France. And now we were told that the sky would fall in.
What about all the problems that British companies are having exporting?
There are plenty.
All the paperwork they've had.
Sure.
The Ireland problem, the fact that people can't get European workers anymore. All of these problems.
Sure. But that's a work in progress. These are tweaks.
Well, we're waiting rather a long time for some of the results.
There you go. Well, we've stopped free movement. We have
There's
our
so
own...
many positives.
That's part of the problem.
Independent trading.
People can't get the staff these days.
But also, you know, Brexit was this incredibly empowering vote for the British public.
Well, you say it's empowering, but all we've done is that we're in hock to other powers now.
Well, no, I think it was part of the possibilities.
And it was never about economics, it was about regaining parliamentary sovereignty.
Precisely.
I don't think the British public really care about parliamentary sovereignty.
Well, they should.
They do. That's why they voted.
The day Philip Schofield gets fired by his agent and leaves ITV, we'd wind up talking about Brexit. Alice Grant, briefly if you can, headline hero, who's caught your eye? Who do you like this week?
I'm all for the British public this week, but especially in terms of my baddie of the week, which is Tedros, the director of the WHO, who's already trying to scaremonger us into being fearful of the next pandemic. It's all over the headlines.
Yeah.
He's insisting that we have to all beware because there could be some, COVID Part 2 around the corner. But actually, I think we have better sense than that, and I hope we stand up against his scaremongering, and I don't trust him at all.
I couldn't agree with you more. The idea that a non-elected body could decide that we're going into lockdown is truly terrifying.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you agree, Michael?
Yeah, we've had enough of these supranational organisations dictating to us.
Because it means you can't have the
Sweden
veto and say we're not going to follow the science.
The elected bodies have to take the advice of non-elected bodies, and that's what happened.
Okay.
But what about our voice as the people of this nation?
Fair enough.
I don't think we're capable of judging the science of COVID.
I disagree.
I don't think the cabinet was.
Your headline hero,
true, yes.
Michael Crick, who is Dan Casita, briefly, if you can.
He is the gentleman that has courageously exposed the appalling, corrupt cancer culture within Her Majesty's government, which goes on about cancel culture at universities and is practising itself. And he, of course, was banned from a government event because of some things he'd said on Twitter, even though he is a leading expert on chemical warfare.
Total hypocrisy. In a sentence, why Jacob Rees-Mogg is your back page zero?
Well, because he was the minister in charge of this new system of going through people's social media posts and decide whether they should be banned or not.
And I couldn't agree more with David Oldroyd Bolt, headline hero, British cycling.
It absolutely has to be. It's a victory for common sense and for women.
No trans women, only
Absolutely.
women. Back page zero, Chris Packham, nature expert. Why?
Chris Packham, eco-lunatic, who keeps being given more and more responsibility. He's now chairman of the RSPCA. He's praising Just Stop Oil and somehow is going to make a documentary about them, which is, of course, going to be impartial, which is, of course, not going to show any bias whatsoever. The man's a lunatic.
Thank you to my brilliant pundits, my amazing team for putting together tonight's show. We're back tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me